No, I don't want to hear any more of this. Billy objected to his wife urging her husband not to cling to his son. Let him rest, he can still work, Kathy continued, trying to protect her son. How long can you rest? I understand that he served in the army, he studied at the Highway Technical School, but it's been more than 3 years since that moment, and Steve still hasn't brought a penny into the house. What's the big deal? I mean, you make good money, and you can easily provide for him. You want him to sit on our backs his whole life. He's 27 years old. He's about to start a family. How is he going to provide for his wife and children? Millie continued, who at that age had already become a father providing for a young family. Well, yes, you're right, but maybe you shouldn't be so quick to take it out on him. I know your companion. He'll take away all desire to work. He won't stop defending Kathy's son, believing that he was created for something more interesting, easy, and exciting. Nothing bad will happen to him. I've raised my son to be a wimp, and now I have to deal with it. He's going to work for John. I've made up my mind, and it's not up for discussion. Why don't I take him to my office? The woman suggested it, trying to keep her son away from hard work. What would he do there? To bring coffee and play a game of leopard's head on the computer. Stop arguing, it's settled. I've already called John, and we've agreed that he'll leave room for Steve. It's a useful experience, moreover. Maybe he'll like it, Billy suggested, since his son was studying at a highway technical school, so the passion for transportation must be present. I'm tired of arguing. You don't hear me at all, the agitated woman replied sadly, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Stop crying. I'm not sending him to slavery, but to an old schoolmate. I'm sure that nothing bad will happen to our son, the man replied, seeing the tears in his wife's eyes. Billy put his arm around his wife's shoulders to comfort her a little and stroked Katie's head. You have no heart at all. I'm going to worry, she said with difficulty as she continued to cry. Calm down, everything will be fine. If he can't cope at all, we'll find a simpler job, but he must learn to earn money and appreciate it, the husband replied, insisting on his own. Promise you'll find something else if he can't work with John? Yes, I promise. By the way, it's almost 8 o'clock in the morning. Is Steve still asleep? Lily asked. It's so early. Let the baby rest, the wife replied. What baby? He'll be nursing his own children soon, and you keep wiping his drool. Mother, stop it, or we'll have a fight. Go, wake him up, and hurry up, said the man, and, opening the window, took out a cigarette to smoke, while his wife went to the bedroom of his son. Good morning, son. Are you asleep? Asked the mother, opening the door to Steve's bedroom. Hi, Mom. No, already awake, replied the young man, wiping his eyes. Your father and I are waiting for you in the kitchen. We need to talk, Katie replied and left to go to her father's room. Reluctantly getting out of bed, Steve made the bed and dressed, hurried after his mother. What are we having for breakfast today? The boy asked, once he was in the kitchen. Sit down, I've got a serious talk for you, Billy answered, putting out his cigarette and closing the window. What do you want to talk to me about? Steve asked in confusion. Dad thinks it's time for you to get a job, Mom replied. You know I'm looking, but I haven't found anything suitable yet, the son replied. Do not interfere in a man's conversation, interrupted the dialogue of wife and son, the head of the family. I'm sorry, Kathy replied guiltily and stood up from the table and rattled the pans to prepare breakfast. You've been looking for a job for 3 years. Don't you think it's time for a change? The father asked, looking into his son's eyes. Is it my fault that nothing suits me? You can't be late. You can't ask for time off. Is this a normal job? Replied Steve, who never stays longer than 2 weeks in any job. Don't you think you're the problem? Nobody's going to wipe your ass, and they're not going to run around like your mother did. Billy objected sharply. Why would you do that? The mother asked, intervening in the dialogue. Are you cooking? Don't get distracted and get busy, replied the husband, looking sternly at his wife. Realizing that it was better not to say anything, the woman continued to cook the soup, listening to the dialogue of her husband and son. "I don't need to wipe anything up for me. I just want to be considered," Steve replied. "Do you deserve it? Have you ever done anything to be respected at work and to be considered by the team?" asked the father. "I should not suck up or be friends with those who do not interest me," replied the son, not realizing that by building relationships, he will not be able to work well in any team. "You have to learn to value the workplace. I called an old acquaintance of mine. He is opening a new service station and is hiring staff. John and I agreed that he'd save a place for you. So congratulations, you're going to work tomorrow." "What? I don't want to work at the service station. I have completely different plans, especially for tomorrow," Steve tried to object. "I'm not asking you what your plans are or what you want. You're a grown man and you have to support yourself. If John is not happy, he will not fire you. He will call me and I will look for methods of influence. Do you understand me?" asked the man, getting angry at his carefree and frivolous son. "Oh, and what will you do to me?" asked the son, throwing his leg over his foot as if he was the master of the house and not afraid of anything. "For starters, I'll take away your pocket money, and if you continue to be negligent, you'll go looking for another place to live." "Any more questions?" Billy asked menacingly, his tone suggesting that it would be better not to argue. "No questions," Steve grumbled unhappily, and refusing breakfast, went to his room, slamming the door loudly. "Why would you do that? He's just a baby," Kathy said to her husband, realizing that her son was upset. "What kid? The man is 27 years old. It's time for him to look for a wife, and he hasn't brought a rebel into the house. Don't even try to change my mind or defend him. I don't want to swear, but you're forcing me to raise my voice," the man boiled, hitting the table with his fist. All right, I'm sorry. Maybe you're right," the wife replied guiltily, agreeing with her husband. "That's fine. Come on, I've got to get to work," Billy said, demanding breakfast. Noticing that it was already 9 o'clock, the man hurriedly ate breakfast and, taking his work documents with him, left for the office. "Son, maybe you'll have breakfast after all," the mother asked, looking into her son's bedroom, right after her husband had left for work. "No, thank you. I did not earn," sharply replied Steve, staring at the monitor of the laptop. "Why would you do that?" "I did nothing wrong," the woman replied guiltily, taking her son's refusal to heart. "Sorry, I did not mean to offend you. It's just that my father does not hear and understand me at all. I don't mind working. I just want to find something interesting and worthwhile," Steve replied, calming his mother and hugging her a little. "I understand you, but you can see that I can't come between you. Yes, your father is strict, and maybe he was wrong to decide everything for you, but try to understand him. He wants what's best for you. He cares, and he's trying to do the best for you. Maybe you will really try to work in a service station. Maybe you will like it," asked the mother, trying to persuade her son to listen to his father. "Okay, for your sake I will try," replied the son, realizing that he did not want to see tears on his mother's face. The next morning, Steve, waking up before 7 a.m. for the first time, rushed to the shower to shave and clean up. Trying not to cross with his father, the guy had breakfast and, taking his diploma with him, went to meet with the owner of the service station. Steve didn't want to work there, especially since he knew John and how strict he was, both at work and in life. At the same time, he didn't want to upset his mother, so he decided that he would do anything to please his father, at least for the first few days, until he could think of something or find a better job. "Good morning, John. I'm here to see you. My father told me you had a vacancy," Steve said, greeting his father's old friend. "Hello, Steve. Yes, we spoke to Billy, and he said you need a job. I can't say no to him, so I'm willing to take you on as an auto mechanic," replied the man in the business suit and gold-rimmed glasses. "That's great, but I don't know much about it. Didn't you go to highway school, or am I confused?" John asked in surprise. No, that's right, answered Steve and gave his employer his diploma. Well, that's not bad. But what about your employment history? I don't know where it is, but I don't think there's any need for it. I didn't work a day. I just went where my dad wanted me to go. You know how he is. Yeah, I recognize Billy. Okay. For now, you'll be apprenticed to the two main mechanics. I'm sure they'll quickly teach you everything and explain how to work. John replied, realizing that Steve wasn't the best worker, but he had to keep his promise to his friend. Okay, agreed, Steve replied, realizing that he didn't have much choice. Come on, I'll introduce you to my colleagues, said the man, and having escorted the boy out of the office, went to the workshop, where two of his mentees were working on the first car, which had arrived half an hour ago. Billy, Austin, distract yourselves for a second, said John, noticing the subordinates digging under the red Mazda. Good morning, Chief, Billy replied, seeing the chief standing by the car. Hi. Sorry we didn't see you. We're draining the old oil because the girl drove for 2 years without servicing the car, complimented his colleague Austin, who also crawled out from under the car to greet the chief. It's no big deal, I get it. Meet Steve and he will be working with you. He's a little inexperienced, so he'll be your apprentice. I'm sure you'll quickly teach him the job and make a good specialist out of him, John said, and entrusting Steve to his colleagues, returned to his office. Let's get acquainted. My name is Billy, and this is Austin, one of the workers answered, shaking Steve's hand. I hope we'll work well together, Steve replied and hurried into the office to change into his work clothes. Without delaying the training of their new colleague, Billy and Austin immediately introduced Steve to the work, telling him the main technical points and nuances of car maintenance. Theory without practice is dead in this business, so the men immediately put Steve behind the Mazda, step by step, telling the guy how to drain antifreeze and change the oil in the automatic transmission. Trying to obey his more experienced colleagues in everything, Steve coped with his task, but he got dirty and almost tore his pants, digging under the bottom of the car. The men realized that the colleague was practically zero, so at the end of the working day, they went up to the chief's office to talk to him. Hello again, John. Can I come in? Billy knocked on the door and saw the chief at his workplace. Yes, come in, answered the man, who used a few minutes to rest and took off his glasses, putting them aside. We wanted to talk to you about the new guy. Are you sure we want him? I don't want to question your choice, but maybe we should look for a more qualified employee, Austin asked, delicately questioning the chief. Men, I realize that Steve is not the most useful employee, but he is the son of an old comrade of mine. I promised him that I would help with Steve's employment and make a man out of him. I hope you'll be sympathetic and help me to shake him into a man capable of earning and providing for himself, John replied, explaining why he'd hired Steve rather than a more experienced and better quality man. I see, so our only chance is to teach him the job, Billy replied, accepting the new conditions. Yes, I'm sorry, but it's the only possibility, admitted the boss. Okay, we heard you, answered Austin, and realizing that there was no point in further conversation, left the chief's office together with his colleague. Well, we'll get used to what Billy had given his colleague, and went to take a shower to tidy up before he left for home. Steve's next morning was not much different from the previous one, as he woke up earlier than usual to avoid being late for work. Hurrying to the machine shop, the guy hoped that he would not have much work to do, as he gets tired quickly and wants to rest more and more often than his colleagues, who use only half an hour during the lunch break. Steve's expectations were dashed. For once in the workshop, he saw several cabs arriving at once for service. All day long, his partners had been rushing their colleague, who was not able to change the air filter or check the condition of the pump. Unable to stand it, Billy got very angry at his helpless colleague and said everything he thought about him, forgetting for a moment about the chief's request. Unable to tolerate such treatment, Steve dropped everything and went to John's office. "Hi, can I see you?" "Hi, come on in. Are you on business or what?" the man asked, inviting Steve into his office. "I can't work under these conditions." "Mate, yeah, I knew he'd be difficult. It's Margarita's upbringing. She's used to spoiling and protecting him, and now I have to deal with it. I'm sorry, but I have no one else to rely on. Be as strict with him as possible, and I'll talk to my son again tonight and explain how to behave," Billy replied, realizing that he was guilty before his friend. "Good. I hope you're not mad at me for calling you." "No, it's okay. I understand, and I probably would have done the same thing." "Well, I'm sorry for bothering you. I hope it won't happen again," John replied, summarizing the conversation with his old friend. Another day in the workshop came to an end, and Steve, having said goodbye to his colleagues, decided to stay a little longer, meeting with his army comrade. Having a few drinks and sitting at the bar, the men chatted, learning about how a few years of their lives had gone after the demo. During this time, the battle buddy had gotten married and had 2 sons, one of whom had already started running, pleasing his father. Steve also wanted to brag about something, but there was nothing to tell except the graduation from the technical school. Noticing that it was already quite late, he said goodbye to his friend and went home, realizing that early in the morning he had to go to work again. "Where have you been?" "It's almost midnight," Billy asked from the doorstep, who was waiting for his son to talk to him once again about work and the future. "I'm an adult, and I can do what I want," Steve answered sharply, with alcohol in his blood, which gave him courage and confidence. "Let's go to the kitchen. We have something to talk about," answered his father, who did not want their loud conversation to wake up his mother, who was tired after a hard day's work. "What did you want to talk to me about?" Steve asked, following his father. "Are you going to embarrass me for a long time?" Billy asked, closing the door to the kitchen. "What are you talking about? I'm working like you wanted me to. What more do you want?" "John called me today and told me how you're working there. When it comes to drinking, you're an adult. And when it comes to work, you can't lift a finger. If John ever complains to me about you again, I'll throw you out on the street with a suitcase and support you however you want. Do you understand me?" His father shouted, barely containing his emotions. "I understand," Steve answered, not wanting to continue the conversation, and went to his bedroom. Waking up in the morning, Steve takes his time at work and gets ready without fear of being late for the workshop. After taking a shower and getting ready, the guy went into the kitchen to have breakfast. The mother hastily prepared food, but noticed that the son eats reluctantly, as if he did not like something. Beginning to worry, the woman asked if Steve was all right, and he told about the night conversation with his father. The guy openly complained about the head of the family, knowing that his mother would stand up for him. Hearing that his father was also going to work, Steve kissed his mother and, trying not to cross paths with his father, hurried off to work. "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" Kathy asked when she was alone with her husband. "What do you mean?" her husband asked with incomprehension. "Steve told me that you yelled at him last night. Did he explain why I raised my voice? Or do you think I did it unjustifiably?" "I don't think you should be so picky. The boy has just started working. Give him time to get used to it," the mother replied, continuing to defend her adult son. "Who's stopping you?" "I just told him not to embarrass me and stop running to John and complaining to him like a school teacher. He's not gonna be coddled, and I'm not gonna let you do it anymore. Raised a wimp, and now I have to deal with it," replied the husband, and, not wanting to quarrel with his wife, hurriedly went to work. Realizing that there was no point in trying to stage a riot, Steve accepted his fate and, trying to listen to his colleagues, began to do his work. Remaining an assistant, the guy learns to do simple work and elementary processes that his colleagues do not want to spend time on, dealing with more labor-intensive tasks. So imperceptibly, for Steve passes several months. All this time, he practically did not cross paths with his boss and did not communicate with his father, believing that they put him in the framework, when there is no choice and no opportunity to decide anything on his own. At the same time, Steve is getting used to his job because Billy and Austin don't trust him with anything complicated or unsafe, and his salary is exactly the same as that of the craftsmen who work from morning till late at night. Another working day is coming to an end, and Steve, realizing that all the easy tasks are over, goes home a little earlier than his colleagues. Coming down from the office to the workshop, John noticed the absence of one of his mentees and was greatly surprised that the boy had left without informing him. Austin explained the reason for Steve's departure, unable to take responsibility and do anything serious. Having considered that 3 months had passed and the boy was ready for new tasks, John asked his mentees to stop babysitting Pavlov and entrust him with independent work. The next morning for Steve was not much different from the previous months, but there was a surprise waiting for him at work. Another car arrived for service and his co-workers put Steve in charge of it, refusing to help him. They told about yesterday's dialogue with the boss and also believed that it's time for the guy to take the job, being responsible for the result. Steve was not happy about this, as he was used to counting on men to do all the dirty and hard work. Realizing that he couldn't get out of it and talking to John wouldn't lead to anything good, Steve started checking, diagnosing and repairing the car. After spending a few days with him, the mechanic replaced the fuel pump, radiator, and a number of other parts, which, in his opinion, were out of order. Having finished all the work, Steve called the client, informing him that the car could be picked up. "Hello, I was told that the car is ready. Can I see the result?" asked a solid and moderately well-fed man in an expensive Italian suit and shoes sparkling with cleanliness. "Good afternoon." "Yes, of course," answered Steve, hurrying to the customer. Trying to please the customer in everything, the auto mechanic showed himself as an extremely attentive worker. Everything seemed to be fine and almost perfect, but when the customer tried to start the car, there was a problem. Steve tried to solve it quickly, but he did not succeed. Moreover, smoke came from under the hood of the car, scaring and angering the customer. "What the hell is this? Not only that the car does not start, so you have finally ruined it? Call the boss. Now we will deal with and find out who of you want to buy me a new car," menacingly declared the man, starting to shout at the whole workshop. "Now, one moment," guiltily answered Steve, who did not know what to do. Running to the office of the boss, he called John to the first floor, as only he can solve the situation, avoiding a grand conflict. "Good afternoon," Richard said, the owner of the service station, recognizing in the businessman an influential businessman known throughout the city. "Hello. What is it with your masters, such that my car after the repair only got worse? It used to stall, and now it won't start at all. Not to mention the fact that there is smoke from under the hood. Is this normal?" The businessman continued to be indignant. "I'm sure we can solve this little misunderstanding in the shortest possible time," John replied, trying to calm the man who could not only ruin the reputation of the service station, but also find levers to close the service once and for all. "And I'll pay twice for the repairs?" Richard asked. "No, our foreman will pay for all the damaged parts," the owner replied, pointing at Steve. The guy tried to challenge the chief's decision, but by the expression of his eyes, he realized that it was not worth it, because he was really guilty of what had happened. "Great, that suits me fine," replied the satisfied businessman, and accepting John's invitation, went with the man to his office to drink coffee and discuss the speed of the second repair. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to find and fix the mistake on his own, Steve turned to his colleagues. Billy and Austin did not want to do extraneous work, as they had enough to do, but realized that the guy was sincerely asking for their help. Having made diagnostics, the colleagues found another problem, which Steve did not notice because of his inexperience and inattention. Despite the high cost of the car, the guy had broken a relatively inexpensive part, losing only part of his salary. Within 24 hours, the partners not only replaced all the worn-out parts, but also completely resuscitated the businessman's SUV, covering the inexperienced colleague. Trying to rehabilitate himself in front of his colleagues, who saved his wallet and reputation in the eyes of his boss, Steve invited Billy and Austin to a bar to have a drink, relax, and socialize in an informal setting. It turned out that they were very pleasant and interesting men who lived hunting, fishing, and other hobbies that took up all their free time. During the conversation, Steve admitted that he had lived under his mother's supervision for too long, so now he was taking his first adult steps. Apologizing to his colleagues, Steve promised to work on himself so that he wouldn't set them up again and jeopardize the service. Keeping his word, Steve began to work better, consulting his coworkers less and less on how to repair this or that car. So imperceptibly, a few more months passed. During this period, Steve became independent and quite a good specialist, pleasing not only his colleagues, but also John. At the same time, his communication with his coworkers became much better. Gradually, they became comrades, and soon they became friends, as they spent time in each other's company from early morning until late evening. As he got to know Billy and Austin more and more, Steve wanted to spend the weekend with them, and when he heard about the fishing trip, he agreed to keep them company. Waking up earlier than usual on Saturday, Steve decided to get ready for an overnight fishing trip and buy everything he needed for it. After having breakfast, he hurried to a specialized store to buy a rod, bait, and other small things, without which there is nothing to do on a fishing trip. Upon returning home, Steve told his mother about his plans and pleased the woman, because the son has not only become independent, but also gained good friends who can help in a difficult moment. With his father, the relationship also improved, because Billy no longer considered his son soft or a wimp, because the old comrade repeatedly called him, telling him about Steve's intermediate successes. "Hi, Uri. We're already in your driveway," said Austin, having reached Steve. "Hi, yeah, just a couple more minutes, and I'm on my way out," Steve replied, and after throwing another sweater in his bag with everything he needed, he hurried downstairs. "So, are you ready for fishing?" Billy asked, meeting his coworker. "Of course I'm ready, but this is the first fishing trip of my life, so don't judge me harshly," answered Steve, who was happy to spend time with his friends and smiled like a child who had received a New Year's present he had long dreamed of. Leaving the city, the men found a rented house near the lake. Having thrown all the things in the house, they decided to spend time outdoors to build a fire and cook something to eat on an open fire. While Steve and Billy were busy making a fire and preparing for dinner, Austin went to the shore and returned a half-hour later, having caught a few small fish. After preparing the soup, the men roasted the meat they had bought at the supermarket on their way to the vacation. Having postponed the main part of the fishing for the morning, they decided to rest and have a little drink in the bathhouse. "So you're still living with your parents?" Austin asked, pouring the white wine. "Yeah, for now. It was my first serious job, so I didn't have any money for rent, and I don't see any point in looking for a separate apartment because I don't have anyone," Steve answered. "With your size, it's not surprising. You've been in the army, and you look like you've been lying on the couch all your life," Billy said. "The army is in the distant past, and after the demo, I didn't want to do anything with myself," Steve answered, drinking another shot. "Well, you should. In order to get some beautiful girl to pay attention to you, you have to pump yourself up," said the tipsy Austin. "That's right, Austin's got a point. It's time for you to find someone else, or you'll live with your parents until you retire," supported his friend Billy. "Maybe you're right, but where can I find girls when I'm always at home or at work?" "A couple of weeks ago, we opened a new fitness center, Scala. Have you heard of it?" Austin asked Steve. No, this is the first time I've heard of it. I was there a couple days ago, and not only can you get fit, but you can meet girls there, dozens of them. You want slim, you want tall. There's something for every taste, Austin continued. I don't know. It must be very expensive, Steve replied. Don't worry, the prices there are quite democratic. And it's worth it, replied Austin and started laughing, realizing that this is the most budget-friendly way to find a beautiful girl to get to know better. Okay, we'll go there sometime, Steve agreed, realizing that he couldn't refuse his friend's offer. After some more drinking and resting in the bathhouse, the friends went to bed to go fishing in the morning. Having slept a little through the dawn, the men ran to the lake and, without taking their eyes off the floats, spent several hours on the shore, catching a bunch of fish. On returning home, Steve was also not empty-handed and pleased his mother, who adored fish. The new work week went as expected, but his colleagues reminded him that they had a special event waiting for them this weekend. Waiting until Saturday, Billy and Austin called Steve to get ready, since they were waiting for him downstairs. Arriving at the huge building lit up like a Christmas tree, Steve began to doubt himself and the need to attend the fitness center, but there was no stopping his friends. Once inside, he was discouraged to see that there were even more girls than men. Good afternoon. Do you want to work out with us? Asked a pumped-up man in a sports uniform who approached the three friends who stopped on the threshold of the fitness center. Hello. Yes, we can try it, Austin replied. Great. My name is Max, and I'll be your trainer. The first session will determine your physical fitness and develop an individualized exercise plan for each of you. I understand you want to come with the three of us. That's right, agreed Billy. Good, in that case, I'll ask you to fill out some small forms, and I'll wait for you in the hall on the right, the trainer answered and left in that direction. The men spent a few minutes to leave their data and pay for the first session, and then they followed Max. The first training session was quite difficult and grueling, as the coach wanted to assess the men's physical fitness, determining their capabilities and potential. At the end of the hour-long session, the friends thanked the trainer and, having agreed on the next session, went to the cafe inside the fitness center to drink water and take a breath. What are you staring at? Austin asked, noticing that Steve was looking somewhere and not hearing his friends. He was staring at that pretty girl in the green suit, Billy said, noticing where his friend was looking. No, I was just thinking, answered Steve, who realized that he had been staring too long at the charming girl from the hall nearby. I'm sorry, but she's not your type, Austin said, seeing a stunning girl with a gorgeous figure and a luscious body. He'd need 10 years of training before he'd even have a chance to meet her, Billy agreed, looking at the gorgeous blonde with the six-pack instead of a tummy. Come on, I was just thinking, Steve replied, trying to stop his friends from discussing it. Yeah, that's what we figured. Just don't drool too much. You can find a girl here and you will succeed, but you shouldn't look at the prettiest girl in the fitness center, Billy answered, trying to support his friend. Trying to stop this ridiculous conversation, Steve left for the shower to freshen up a bit and relax after a grueling workout. After stopping at a cafe for dinner, the men said their goodbyes and went home. That night, Steve slept unusually well and pleasantly because he had a dream with a charming girl in a green tracksuit. Trying to push away his thoughts and fantasies, Steve tried to concentrate on his work, but it didn't help because the girl didn't leave his mind. Waiting for another workout, Steve decided to use the moment while his friends were busy exercising and talk to the coach. Excuse me, Max, but can I ask you a question not related to our training? Steve asked, deciding to ask about the girl from the neighboring gym. Yes, of course. What did you want to know? You see that girl over there in the green tracksuit? How long has she been coming to see you? Maybe you know something about her, asked the mechanic, hoping that the coach knows something about her. This girl has been with us since the first day. Her name is Maddie, answered Max. You know everyone that well? Steve was surprised. No, she just doesn't train. She works as a coach like me. In that gym, we have athletics, and you won't find a professional better than Maddie in our city. So your colleagues? Then everything is clear, answered Steve, who felt a little embarrassed by the situation. Deciding not to continue the dialogue, he returned to the training, trying to concentrate on physical exercises with dumbbells and weights. While continuing to work and attend workouts, Steve repeatedly pays attention to the blonde girl from the neighboring gym. She constantly dreams about him and gives him no peace, but Steve realizes that he has no chance because she is too good. For weeks on end, Maddie doesn't get out of his head, and it becomes all too apparent. Friends realize that Steve has fallen in love for the first time and persuade him to meet a girl, because it is not so terrible, and there are always chances. He refuses his friend's idea to the last, but then Austin and Billy say that they will risk getting to know her instead of him. Jealous of his colleagues, Steve decides to try to communicate with the girl. Having finished the class a little earlier than his friends, the guy headed to the neighboring hall to watch the pretty girl's workout. "Hello, are you coming to our practice or what?" Maddie asked, noticing a strange guy standing near the front door to their gym. "Hello. No, I'm just looking," replied Steve, who didn't know what to say to this charming and blindingly beautiful blonde. "I'm sorry, but that's not our policy. You can join the workout or, if you don't mind, leave this room," Maddie replied, admonishing the stranger. "All right, I'll leave, but only on one condition," the boy replied, deciding that this was his first and last chance. "What's that?" "You'll agree to have dinner with me in a restaurant," Steve replied, gathering all his will and courage into a fist. "Are you kidding me? You're holding up practice," replied Maddie, a little shocked by the stranger's insolence. "No, I'm not messing with you. This is the only condition under which I will leave." "Okay, I agree," the girl replied, causing Steve to smile sincerely. Without wasting precious time, Maddie went back to her workout, and Steve left the gym, telling his friends that he had asked the girl out and she had agreed. After finishing his workout and taking a shower, Steve went to the nearest flower store to buy a beautiful bouquet and try to make a good impression on the girl who had won his heart. Back at the fitness center, Steve waited until the end of the workday and, noticing Maddie, hurried over to her. "I've been expecting you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Steve." "My name is Maddie, but I can't say that I'm glad to meet you," the girl replied with a chill in her voice. "I understand. I apologize for my impudence, but I really wanted to get to know you better, and I'm glad you accepted my invitation to dinner." "Steve, I'm sorry, but I only agreed so as not to disrupt the training," Maddie replied, and without taking the flowers, stopped the car and drove home. Steve watched the cab drive away for a few moments, realizing that the girl had deceived him. Determined to stand his ground until the end, a few days later, Steve again visited the neighboring gym, disrupting the training session. Realizing that history would repeat itself, Maddie decided it would be easier to agree to a date once to stop the outrage. Getting a second consent, Steve was still just as positive, putting aside fear and doubt. Meeting the girl again after work, he realized that this time she was serious, too, so he invited Maddie to a beautiful and not cheap restaurant near the fitness center. "Thanks for agreeing to meet me," Steve said to Maddie, glad that at least the second time she did not refuse a date. "You're welcome, but don't expect more than that. I don't want anything to affect my work and ask you not to disrupt my training anymore," the girl replied. "Yeah, of course. I'm sorry for my impudence. I just liked you very much," the guy confessed, unable to take his eyes off the charming blonde with beautiful blue eyes. "Thank you, I'm very pleased," the girl replied, slightly embarrassed. "I'm very happy about it. I realize that from the outside it might seem like I'm crazy, but to a certain extent it's true. I've been watching you for days, and you seem to me a very interesting girl, and I hope I'm not mistaken in my conclusions." I don't know what to say, Maddie replied, feeling a little embarrassed. You don't have to answer anything. I understand perfectly well, and I'm just grateful for this chance, replied Steve, trying to be a real gentleman. After ordering, the couple ate dinner, continuing to socialize and get to know each other. Noticing that it was getting too late, Maddie asked him to walk her as public transportation was out and she was a little scared to go home alone. Steve gladly agreed because he considered it an additional chance to talk and spend at least a few more minutes with the girl. Once in the driveway, Maddie said goodbye to Steve and letting him kiss her on the cheek, ran home. Joyful Steve couldn't take a step for a few more minutes, realizing that the date had gone better than he could have expected. A couple of days later, in the middle of the workday, a yellow Matisse parked near the car service center with Maddie at the wheel. After shutting the car off, she headed inside the building and meeting one of the workers, decided to talk to him, telling him about the problems with the car. Good afternoon. Could you help me with my car? Maddie asked Austin. Hello, what's your problem? He asked, recognizing the girl from the fitness center. I don't know. The car won't start the first time and stalls at every stoplight. I don't know much about it, so I decided to go to the nearest service I saw on my way. Okay, let's take a look, Austin replied, and went outside to look under the hood of the car. He fiddled with the car for a few minutes before sighing heavily, wiping his hands clean of dust and machine oil. What is it? Is it something serious? Maddie asked fearfully. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't handle it on my own. Get the car into the box, and I'll call our best mechanic, Austin said, and hurried inside the shop. After listening to the foreman, Maddie had a hard time starting the car and drove it into a separate box, waiting for the foreman to return. A few minutes later, she saw Austin with Steve walking behind him. This is our best technician. I'm sure he can help you, Austin replied, deciding to bring his colleague and the girl he liked a lot closer together. Hi, so you work here? Maddie asked Steve. Hi, yeah, I take it you're having some car trouble, Steve asked. Yes, the second foreman said it was something serious and needed a better worker. I take it that meant you, Maddie asked. Well, I guess so, Steve said, a little embarrassed. So can you help me? Let's see what the problem is, answered the mechanic, and looking under the hood of the car, began to check the condition of the main units and assemblies. What is it? Is it serious? Maddie asked, looking under the hood of the yellow Matisse. How long have you had it serviced? Do you have any receipts or certificates of work done? Steve asked. No, I have nothing. This car was given to me by my mom. She bought herself a new car and gave this one to me so I could go to work. Maddie answered. Got it. Basically, everything is clear to me here, but you'll have to leave the car until morning. I think that tomorrow morning everything will be ready and there will be no problems with it in the near future. Well, how much will it cost? The girl asked. It's all free for you, Steve replied. No, it doesn't work that way. I realize it's probably not cheap. Stop it, I won't charge you. You're late for work. So I don't dare to keep you late, and we won't discuss the financial issue anymore. Okay. Okay, thank you. You'll thank me tomorrow, Steve replied, and taking his tools, began to tinker with the car. Realizing that she was superfluous here, Maddie went to work. As it turned out, there was no breakdown, just antifreeze and a timing belt, since the car had been poorly maintained for what seemed like a long time. Steve did it in a couple hours, but decided not to tell the girl about it, raising the importance of his work. The next morning, Maddie visits the auto shop again and, making Steve, checks his work. The car starts with ease and doesn't stall, idling quietly. Thank you, you've really helped me out. Maybe I can pay for the repairs after all, Maddie asked, feeling a little awkward. No, I don't need anything. I'm glad I could help you, Steve replied, refusing the money. Okay, well then can I thank you in some other way? How about having coffee after work? the girl asked, suggesting a meeting. Yeah, why not? I'll meet you at the fitness center around 8. Good, I have just at that time ends the last training, answered Maddie, and thanking Steve once again, went to work in an old Matisse. How'd it go? Did everything work out? Austin asked Steve as soon as the girl left. Yeah, it worked out great. Thanks for turning down the repair and handing the car over to me, Steve replied, thanking his colleague for his ingenuity. You owe me a bottle, replied the friend, and, patting the guy on the shoulder, continued working on the next car. Having finished work a little earlier than usual, Steve hurried home to freshen up and change clothes. Noticing that it was already the beginning of 8, he hurried to the fitness center to be on time. Meeting up, the couple headed to a nearby cafe for coffee and some more socializing. This time, Maddie was more cheerful. It was noticeable that she herself did not mind socializing, as she wanted to know a little more about the man who had reanimated her car. Counting on another meeting, Steve asked for her cell phone number, realizing that the girl might refuse. To his surprise, Maddie readily agreed, as she is excited about the new meeting and is ready for it any day. Walking back to the fitness center, the couple walked a bit in the park and came to the parking lot so Maddie could drive home. The next night, Steve decides to call the girl to set up another appointment. Hey, it's Steve. I hope I'm not interrupting you. Hi. No, I'm fine. How are you? Fine, I finished work and decided to call to ask if you want to meet in a couple hours, Steve asked, hoping that the girl would agree. In principle, it is possible. Will you wait for me after the training or meet me somewhere in a cafe? I'll make you after work. Okay, then I'll meet you at 8, Maddie replied, summarizing the conversation. Meeting again after work, the couple decided to go to the movie theater for one of the last shows. Having bought tickets for the last row, Maddie and Steve hardly saw the movie, as it was much more interesting to make out while enjoying each other's company. A few dates later, Steve realized that the girl had the same strong interest in him as he had in her, so he did not waste time and offered Maddie a serious relationship. As expected, the girl agreed, because she enjoyed spending time together with Steve and generally liked the guy, despite his modest appearance and financial situation. Rejoicing at the new stage in his life, Steve comes to work the next morning with a triumphant look, as if he won the lottery yesterday. Friends notice the elevated mood of his colleague, but because of the large amount of work, do not ask about what has happened, waiting for a lunch break. After finishing repairing another car, Austin and Billy headed into the back room to make coffee and grab some snacks. A few minutes later, Steve joined them, deciding to take a break before continuing with the maintenance on the car they had received that morning. What are you so happy about? Did you find money on the street or did you dig up some treasure? Austin asked, trying to find out the reason for Steve's smile that hadn't disappeared from his face since this morning. Remember that gorgeous blonde from the fitness center, repairing her old Matisse? Steve asked. Of course we do. It's impossible to forget her, Billy pointed out. She's been my girlfriend since yesterday, Steve said, bragging to his friends. Are you serious or are you kidding? Austin asked, not believing his own ears. No, I'm quite serious. She and I have been on several dates and last night I proposed to her, Steve replied. Maybe you dreamed it, Billy asked, deciding to play a little joke on his colleague. You don't believe me? I can bring her over to get to know her better, Steve replied, a little perturbed by his friend's distrust. We believe you and congratulations, because you managed to get one of the most beautiful girls. The main thing is not to miss your luck. There will be no second chance, answered Austin, supporting his friend. By the way, since you're not lonely now, why don't we go to the country house in pairs this weekend? The ladies would get acquainted, socialize, and we wouldn't be so bored, Billy suggested. Why not? I just need to discuss the matter with Maddie, and if she doesn't mind, we can go to the same cabin as last time, agreed Steve, hoping that his girlfriend would also agree to spend the weekend in the fresh air. In the evening, he waits for Maddie from work and, deciding to take a walk in the park, tries to ask about the weekend, fearing to get a rejection. The girl notices that the guy is worried and frankly nervous, as if he wants to talk about something, but does not know where to start. Deciding to push him into a dialogue, Maddie decides to be the first to ask about what's troubling Steve. Is something wrong? You're a little jumpy today, the girl said. No, nothing's wrong. Just some friends suggested a weekend trip out of town, and I don't know how to tell you about it. What's the big deal? It's a great idea because you need to spend time with them as well as me. No, you don't understand. They want us to go to the countryside as a couple, Steve replied, explaining why he was so nervous. And you were nervous about that? I don't mind, because they are your friends and sooner or later I'd have to meet them, the girl answered coldly. Do you really think so? Surprised asked the guy, assuming that he would have to persuade Maddie for a long time. Of course, how could it be otherwise? I will gladly keep you company, and I'm sure we will have a good time. Hearing these words, Steve hugged and kissed the girl, because she is not only insanely beautiful, but also wise. Having seen Maddie home, Steve called Billy and Austin back, informing them that everything was in order and the cabin could be booked. Meanwhile, the girl went up to her house and, realizing that she wouldn't be home that weekend, decided to talk to her parents, giving them a heads up. I need to talk to you about something, said the girl when she saw her father and mother in the kitchen. What do you want to talk about? The father asked. I want to go to the country this weekend to relax a little. That's a good idea. We want to get away too, the mother said. No, I want to go with my boyfriend, replied Maddie. What? You have a boyfriend? Dad was surprised. Yes, I just didn't want to talk about it right away, since we just started dating, replied the girl. Who is he? What does he do? Is he from a good family? Mom asked, trying to find out more about her daughter's new boyfriend. He works as a mechanic in a car repair shop. I can't say anything else, as I don't know his parents. A mechanic? Shouldn't you have found someone better? The father asked indignantly. What's wrong with this profession? I don't care about material status, and it's more important that Steve is a good person, replied the daughter. All right, so be it. When will you introduce us to him? The mother asked. I'll do it a little later. For now, we want to go and relax with his friends. Okay, but don't take too long. We need to know who you're hanging out with. Look, me, if he offends you, nothing good awaits him, said the father, worried about his daughter. Don't worry, no one is going to hurt me, Maddie replied, reassuring her father. After discussing the upcoming weekend with her parents, the girl went to her bedroom to get some rest before the next working day. Meanwhile, Steve and his friends rented a cabin and went to the store to get groceries before heading out of town. Closer to the weekend, they gather as one big group. Billy took his spouse, Austin took a girlfriend he had gotten relatively recently, and Steve took Maddie with him. Once they arrived at the cabin, they settled in, and after making dinner, they decided to socialize a bit and get to know each other better. I think you remember my co-workers from work. This is Austin and this is Billy, said Steve, introducing his friends to Maddie. Nice to meet you. My name is Maddie, replied the girl. We know. We saw you at the fitness center. Austin is me, and this is my lovely Noria, said one of the men, introducing his girlfriend. As you can guess, my name is Billy, and this is my wife Hannah, the other one added. Pleased to meet you all, replied Billy's wife, having gotten to know both his colleagues and their girlfriends. As they continued chatting, they got to know each other better, and while the men went fishing, the women got busy preparing dinner. After making everything they needed, they went out for a walk, and when they saw it was getting dark, they called the men into the house. Steve and his friends were in no hurry to return, as they got into fishing and knelt at the bathhouse to relax a bit. Forgetting about the girls, they took a bottle of white water and sat in the steam room, enjoying the peace and quiet. Meanwhile, The Goodalls were left alone in the house and, taking out a bottle of wine, also decided to socialize, discussing men. In the morning, everyone goes back to town and Steve, having returned home closer to lunchtime, meets his parents, who knew nothing about his plans for the weekend. "Where have you been and why didn't you spend the night at home?" the mother asks when she hears that her son has come home. "Hi, Mom. With friends went out of town. We're fishing," Steve replied. "And we do not need to warn us about it. Mom was worried. Couldn't get through," Billy answered. "I'm sorry. My phone was dead, and I didn't see that you called." "There's nothing to worry about. I was with my friends and my girlfriend." "Girlfriend? You didn't mention you were seeing someone," my mother was surprised. "Well, you wanted me to grow up and be my own man. First a job, now a girlfriend. Everything is exactly as you dreamed," answered Steve. "Well done, son. Finally you start to please us with your mother," replied the father, happy that his son took the mind and started to do the right thing. "Who is she? When will you introduce us to her?" Mom asked. "Her name is Maddie. She works as a fitness trainer at the new sports center. I promise I'll introduce you soon," Steve replied, reassuring his parents. As he continued to see Maddie and work at the auto shop, Steve quickly forgot about his mother's promise, concentrating fully on local problems and tasks. Diligently repairing cars, Steve has caused astonishment to John, who recently considered him an unpromising slacker, unable to take responsibility for his actions. In his spare time, Steve does not forget about the girl, spoiling Maddie not only with his attention, but also with modest gifts, confirming his serious attitude to her. 3 months have passed since the moment when Steve promised his parents to introduce them to Maddie, and his mother, having started to worry, reminded him about it again. Realizing that further postponement is impossible, Steve decided to talk to the girl, discussing her future acquaintance with his parents. Having met Maddie, Steve invited her to the park to tell her about his mother and father's wish, but he couldn't find the words, not knowing where to start. "You're kind of pensive and quiet today. Knowing you, I suppose you want to talk about something?" Maddie asked, who had gotten to know Steve well enough over the months to notice any change in his behavior. "Yes, I can't keep anything from you. I wanted to talk to you about my parents." "I'm guessing they want to meet me?" the girl asked. "Yeah, that's right. I don't know how you'll react to it, but I really wanted you to understand," Steve replied. "In principle, I don't mind, especially since my parents have wanted to meet you for a long time." "Great, then I'll arrange for them to wait for you to visit," Steve asked, clarifying whether the girl is really ready to meet and meet soon. "Yes, okay. I think we can meet your parents this weekend. I hope they are not too picky, because I'm starting to be a little afraid," admitted Maddie, realizing that this is a serious and responsible step. "No, they are simple and good-natured people, especially my mom," answered Steve, reassuring his girlfriend. "Well then, okay, I agree." Hearing this, Steve was very happy and, hugging Maddie tightly, kissed her. When he got home, he told his parents that they might be meeting soon and nothing could be planned for the weekend. Hearing agreement on their part, Steve called the girl back and clarified that her parents would be expecting her on Saturday, closer to 6 in the evening. To make it convenient, he will pick her up, and on the way they will buy some cake for tea. Maddie agrees, and soon the weekend arrives. Meeting with the guy, she is very nervous and afraid. At some point, the girl even wanted to run away, refusing the acquaintance, but she realized that it would be ugly, and she has no way back. "Hello, my name is Maddie. Glad to meet you," said Maddie, seeing Steve's mother on the threshold of the apartment. "Hello, Maddie. My name is Kathy, and this is my husband, Billy," the woman replied, pointing to a man standing a couple of meters away from her. "Good afternoon. I'm glad Steve finally had the courage to bring you into our home. Come in, make yourself at home," replied her father, who smiled at the charming girl. "Father is happy, don't worry," Steve whispered in Maddie's ear, noticing that her father liked her a lot. "Come in, we'll have tea," answered the mother, and leaving the children to their father, ran to the kitchen to finish preparing for dinner. "First wash your hands, and then to the kitchen," added the father, and, embarrassed, left after his wife. "You see, my parents are not as scary as you might think," Steve said humorously, trying to lighten the mood a little. "Yeah, I noticed," Maddie replied, calming down a bit. After washing their hands and looking in the mirror, Maddie and Steve also went into the kitchen to talk to their parents and eat dinner with their family. "You're a trainer at the fitness center, right?" Katie clarified, trying to find out more about Maddie. "Yes, that's right. My mom works as a school principal, and my dad is on the city council," Maddie replied, telling not only about herself, but also about her parents. Hearing this made Steve's parents a little embarrassed and uncomfortable, as they have simpler and more modest jobs with little income. "That's great, and I work as an accountant in a small private office." "Billy is an energy engineer, but has been in a management position for several years," the mother replied, telling us about herself and her husband. "Oh, that must be very interesting," the girl replied kindly, glancing at Steve's father. "Well, I wouldn't say that, but maybe you're right," Billy replied, embarrassed. As they continued chatting, the parents noticed that Maddie was not only charming, but also pleasant in conversation, smart and intelligent girl, communication with whom brought a lot of pleasure. Noticing that it was already too late, Maddie apologized, as she had to go home. Her parents did not delay the girl and made their son walk her home, as it was getting late, and it was not quite safe outside. When Steve returned home an hour later, he noticed that his parents were still sitting in the kitchen discussing something. "Didn't you guys go to bed yet? It's late." "Come over for a minute," the mother said, offering her son a cup of tea. "What is it?" "Don't tell me you didn't like Maddie," Steve replied, worried about his parents' acquaintance with the girl. "Are you mad? We expected all sorts of things and prepared for the worst, but Maddie is a dream come true. On the contrary, we wanted to tell you to hold on to this girl with both hands, and if you really like her, don't take too long to propose," Billy replied. "I don't think I'm planning to get married. It's too soon," Steve replied. "Too young? You're 28, you're about to turn 30, and you still don't have a wife or kids. Maddie is a wonderful girl, and I'm sure you'll have wonderful children," replied the mother, dreaming of grandchildren. "All right, I'll think about it." "Glad that you like her," replied the son, and realizing that it was too late, went to his room. After meeting Steve's parents, several more months pass. During this time, the couple continued their relationship, getting to know each other better and better. Each date was special and romantic because Steve was very attentive to his favorite girl, driving him crazy. Maddie appreciates the warm attitude to herself and treats the man with reciprocity, doing everything so that he does not regret that he chose her. New Year's Eve is approaching and Maddie, going to work, hears her parents actively discussing something in the kitchen. It turns out that the mother is not happy that her daughter will not introduce them to her young man and is ready to look for an automobile workshop personally to see the mysterious Steve in person. Realizing that they can't put it off, Maddie walks into the kitchen and reassures her mother, informing her that she's ready to introduce them any minute. "Really? You're really ready for us to meet your boyfriend?" "I was beginning to think he was fictional and didn't exist," Mom replied with irony in her voice. "No, he's real and you'll soon see it. You can say where and when you're ready to meet him and I'll talk to Steve. Invite him to our house for a holiday dinner," answered the father, realizing that New Year's Eve is a family holiday, during which it will be very useful to meet his daughter's fiancé. "Okay, agreed," Maddie replied and left for work. Realizing that she still had a few minutes before the beginning of the working day, the girl decided to call Steve, warning him that her parents wanted to meet him and it was impossible to delay. "Hello, my favorite. Aren't you busy?" the girl asked, getting through to the man. "Hi, sweetheart. No, I just arrived at the workshop. And how are you there? Something happened or just missed? Steve asked, not expecting from Maddie such an early call. Both. My parents are already panicking that you don't exist, or I'm just afraid to introduce you to them. I had to tell them that we're ready to meet at any time, and my dad invited you to New Year's Eve dinner. I hope you don't mind that. Of course, I don't mind. I think it's time I got to know them too. Or it would be awkward to do it during marriage, Steve replied. Marriage? Are you proposing to me already? The girl asked, embarrassed. Well, not yet. But you never know. Anything can happen, Steve replied, realizing that his joke was not quite appropriate. So I call my parents and say that you agree? Maddie tried to clarify. Yes, you can reassure them and tell them that I am absolutely real, and in a few days they will see me at their house. Okay, thank you. Maddie answered and hung up the phone and called her parents back to tell them that the New Year's Eve dinner would be held in Steve's company. Having got another car to work on, Steve can't concentrate on his task for a long time, as he realizes that in a few days, a very important and responsible step awaits him. It is not only uncomfortable, but also embarrassing to go to the house empty-handed, so Steve decides to spend the next 2 days trying to find some presents. He knows practically nothing about the girl's parents and realizes that he can't do without Maddie's help. Having hardly worked his shift, the man hurried to the fitness center and, after waiting for the end of the training process, called Maddie to him. Hi, what are you doing here? I thought we didn't have an appointment today, she said, not expecting to see Steve. Hi, yeah, I understand, but we need to talk. What's up? Did you change your mind? Maddie asked, scared. No, I haven't changed my mind. That's not what I meant. A New Year's Eve dinner without presents is unforgivable, and I don't know your parents at all. Will you help me pick out something for them that will be pleasant and memorable surprises? Steve asked, calming the girl down. Oh, that's what you mean. Of course I'll help, replied Maddie, realizing that it was no big deal. After having coffee at the fitness center, Maddie went home and Steve called his friends to borrow some money since his salary does not allow him to buy several good gifts at once. The next morning, the couple met up and went shopping in search of gifts for their parents. Having bought a beautiful scarf for Maddie's mother and a modest souvenir for her father, Steve realized that they could not do without something tasty for the holiday table. Afraid not to guess with the choice, the man decided to limit himself to a cake and a bottle of champagne. December 31 comes and Maddie, having run away from work right after lunch, goes to Steve's car repair shop to give him a ride home and from there go to her place for dinner. After taking all the presents, the couple goes to the girl's house and, ringing the doorbell, wait impatiently for someone to open the door. At some point it opened, and Steve saw a beautiful woman, by the appearance of which was not difficult to guess that this is Maddie's mom, because they are alike as 2 drops of water. Hello, my name is Steve, very glad to meet you, said the man, handing the woman a cake and a bottle of champagne. Hello, come in, said the girl's mother, letting the couple into the house. Hi, Mom, said Maddie, giving her mom a hug and a kiss on the cheek. My name is Selena, and I'm very happy to meet you too. Maddie has told us so much about you that we were beginning to doubt that the guy really existed. I hope now there is no doubt that I am real, asked Steve. No, I'm sure my daughter has excellent taste, Selena replied, complimenting her daughter's lover. Well, hello, Steve. My name is Mickey, said a man who came out of the bedroom and shook Steve's hand. Hello, nice to meet you. I hope I'm not interrupting the party. No, you're just in time. I have everything ready, answered his mother and ran into the kitchen to set the table. So you're a car mechanic, right? Mickey asked, left alone with his daughter's man. Yes, I work at a shop near John's, Steve replied. Antipobs. I know him, he's a good guy, replied the man who had crossed paths with the service station owner many times and even asked him for help. Yes, good. "But sometimes too strict," replied Steve, remembering the first months of work in the workshop. "There is that, but I'm sure it was all business. Shall we have a drink while the ladies are having a celebratory dinner?" "Yes, we could," Steve replied with a twinkle in his eye. Mickey didn't like this reaction so much, but he didn't say anything, because today was a holiday and the desire to drink was welcome. After sitting and chatting in the living room for a while, the men heard the women calling them to the table. Gathering in the kitchen, the family continued to communicate and get acquainted with the man of the daughter, learning more and more interesting things about him. With the chimes striking, they not only congratulated each other on the new year, but also gave memorable gifts. Selena and Mickey were pleasantly surprised by Steve's attention, but even more they were conquered by the fact that he guessed with the gifts, giving really useful and necessary things for them. Steve was also happy about it, realizing that he had earned a little plus for himself and would be able to leave a good impression of himself. Celebrating New Year's Eve, Steve and Maddie decided to take a little walk and go to the city center to watch the festive fireworks. The parents did not object, realizing that young people need to have fun and have fun. After going downtown, the couple discussed meeting Maddie's parents and concluded that everything went better than one might expect. Upon returning home, Maddie tried to talk to her parents and, according to her mother, was able to ascertain that she really liked Steve. Her father isn't happy with everything, but he's perpetually grouchy and not happy with much in life in general, so her mother advises her to ignore what he has to say. A couple of weeks later, Maddie is preparing to celebrate her 25th birthday and decides to book a table at a cafe, gathering work colleagues and acquaintances. Realizing that Steve might be uncomfortable around strangers, Maddie suggests that he invite Austin and Billy, especially since she has become friends with their other halves Maria and Anna. Steve is overjoyed by this news, and after waiting for his lunch break, he tells his friends about it, causing a storm of positive emotions. Realizing that the number of guests began to increase, Maddie called back to the cafe and ordered not just a table, but a small room where they could have fun without paying attention to other visitors. Meeting at the cafe, Austin, Maria, Billy and Anna congratulate the girl on her birthday by giving her presents. Soon Maddie's work colleagues arrive at the party, who also decided not to reinvent the wheel, presenting money for the girl to spend on what she needs most. The last to arrive at the party is Steve, explaining that he has a special surprise to present at the end of the evening. Having filled their glasses, everyone once again congratulates Maddie on her birthday and cheerfully celebrates this event, dancing and singing at karaoke. Gradually, the evening comes to an end, and realizing this, Steve decides to reveal his surprise. "Maddie, can I talk to you for a minute?" said the man, realizing that soon the guests will begin to disperse. "Yeah, sure. Remember, I told you that at the end of the evening, you will have a special surprise?" Steve asked, anticipating an interesting and original gift. "Yes, you said that at the beginning of the evening," Maddie confirmed. "We've known each other for a while, and I've realized that I'll never find a better girl than you. You're smart, beautiful, and just a wonderful person that I've never doubted for a minute, and I hope I never will. Today is your day, and I want to make it the brightest and most memorable. I hope this gift will make you happy," said Steve, and knelt down and pulled a ring box out of his pocket. "Oh my God, are you serious?" asked a shocked Maddie, realizing what was going on. "Yes, and you, when will you be ripe?" Maria asked, elbowing her man in the side. "As soon as," so immediately he answered, trying not to be specific. "Fill your glasses," she said. "Yes," said Billy, realizing that Austin had to be rescued and his girlfriend's attention diverted. Gradually, the birthday celebration turned into a proposal celebration that lasted about another hour. Realizing that it was too late, the couple left the cafe and Steve took his favorite girl home. The next morning, he waited for Maddie at the entrance with a bouquet of flowers, As in the evening, they agree that they would not delay the marriage in a long box and will go to the registry office to apply and decide on the date. Meeting Maddie, Steve and his girlfriend hit the promise they made to each other the night before. Back home, Steve tells his parents that he has proposed, and this morning, he and Maddie have already applied to the registry office. Mother and father are truly happy because their son has chosen a wonderful girl and has finally become an adult, independent and able to take responsible male actions. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk," said Maddie, returning home, who also decided to tell her parents about everything. "Yes, daughter, is something wrong?" asked her mother, trying to understand what Maddie wanted to talk about. "Steve proposed to me yesterday, and we applied for the registry office this morning. I hope you're happy." "Yes, my daughter, I'm very happy for you," Selena replied tearfully and hugged her daughter. "Are you in no hurry? Maybe we should meet a little more," asked the father. "What are you starting?" "Stop it. They are happy and love each other." The woman objected to her husband, so that he did not spoil the mood of his daughter with stupid questions. "No, we are not in a hurry. We did it consciously and are ready to become husband and wife," coldly replied Maddie, not giving in to the provocation of her father. "Good girl, everything is right," Selena supported her daughter. Mickey wanted to say something else, but at some point, he changed his mind and went out to the entrance to have a smoke to relax a little and not to continue the conversation. When he returned to the apartment a few minutes later, he also congratulated his daughter and wished her to be happy, because she really deserved it. In the morning, Maddie left for work, and her father, deciding to keep her mother a little longer, asks her to give him a few minutes for one very important and delicate topic, which he did not talk about yesterday. "You do realize that Steve needs to know about what happened 15 years ago, don't you?" Mickey asked. "Why would he need to know about it? They love each other, what else is needed?" replied his wife, believing that it was not necessary to tell about the past. "I don't agree with you. It is very important and can affect their communication and relationship. Such a secret can lead to scandals, and that's at the very least. Have you considered that such a secret could be the beginning of the downfall of your daughter's family life? Or do you want him to leave her after a few years, discouraging all desire to marry a second time?" continued to insist on his head of the family. "Stop it. Nothing like that will happen. They are doing well, and it is not worth getting involved. I forbid you to talk about what happened then. Forget about that incident and live your life in peace," Selena replied, not wanting to rehash the past. "I can't do that. It's not fair," her husband objected. "Did anyone ask you?" "Silence, if you do not want it to affect our personal lives," rudely replied the wife, trying to protect her daughter and her fiancé from unnecessary information for them. Outraged by his wife's behavior, Mickey said everything he thought, and having scandalized his wife, left the house, slamming the door. After a walk in the fresh air, the man went to a cafe and decided to drink a whitewash to calm down a little and let the situation go, trying not to interfere in his daughter's personal life and not to spoil the upcoming wedding. A couple of days later, Mickey realizes that he as a man and head of the family should not only support his daughter, but also help financially, because her fiancé is not rich, and the wedding should be lavish and memorable. Getting ready for the wedding, Mickey rented an expensive restaurant, allocating money for a cake, a suit for the groom, and an exquisite dress for the bride. Having spent heavily, the man does not count the money, realizing that his daughter deserves to be the happiest. The hustle and bustle and preparations continue, and imperceptibly, the wedding day approaches. Realizing that the wedding is already in a few days, Mickey again gives in to panic because Steve knows nothing about what happened in the distant past. Returning home early, the man decides to have another talk with his wife, discussing an old family secret. He is convinced that it is impossible to hide such a thing, and Selena believes that with the truth her husband can not only destroy the relationship between Maddie and Steve, but also cause his daughter a severe psychological trauma, since she does not know anything. Forget it. I've told you several times not to bring it up again. I don't want our daughter to suffer and cry, said Selena, demanding that her husband continue to keep the secret. If the feelings are serious and Steve really loves our daughter, it will not interfere with their relationship. If it is not and he leaves her, then let it all happen on the eve of the wedding, and not during married life, when Maddie will spend all the best years on someone who does not deserve it, said Mickey, and not seeing in his wife's eyes understanding, left the house again. Realizing that this cannot go on indefinitely, the man leaves to meet Steve. Arriving at the service station, Mickey looks for Steve and, having met his boss, asks John to take him to his future son-in-law. "Hi, we need to talk and urgently," says the man, meeting Steve. "Hi, okay, I'll be done with the car repairs now and we can talk," the auto mechanic replied. "Your shift is over for today." John intervened in the conversation, realizing that Mickey is a serious and solid man who wouldn't come just for fun. "Good, then let's meet in 15 minutes at the cafe. I need to take a shower," replied Steve, realizing that he needed to clean himself up, having washed off the dirt and machine oil. "Great, I'll meet you at the cafe across the street," Mickey replied, and left the machine shop for the cafe nearby. "We need to talk. My wife asked me not to say anything about it, but I realized that it's not right." The man started the conversation. "What do you mean?" Steve asked with incomprehension. "The thing is that 15 years ago, Maddie often went fishing with me. She liked winter fishing the best because I let her run around, played snowballs with her, and took her sledding. Another trip to nature did not bode well, but something happened that I could not have expected. At some point, the ice cracked and Maddie went underwater. I did everything I could to help her, but she was in the icy water for a long time, which affected her health." "What's wrong with her? Is she in some kind of trouble?" Steve asked fearfully. "Yes, she was very cold, and it was affecting her health. As you can imagine, I'm referring primarily to her health as a woman," Mickey admitted. "What do you mean?" Steve asked incredulously. "The fact is that Maddie can't have children. It's my fault, and I've felt guilty about it all my life. My wife asked me never to tell anyone about it, but I realized that you are Maddie's future husband, and you should know the truth. I sincerely hope that this will not affect your family life, because you love each other," continued Maddie's father, realizing that such information could cause shock. "Yes, I understand," Steve said, his thoughts scattering in different directions. For a few minutes, Mickey continued to say and explain things to Steve, but he couldn't hear anything as he was thinking about what he had just learned. After hearing the story to the end, Steve, without answering a word, jumped out of the cafe and took a cab to the fitness center. Once there, he called Maddie, demanding that she come outside right away as he had a serious conversation to have. "Hi, is something wrong?" "You seem nervous today," Maddie said, meeting Steve outside the fitness center. "Why didn't you say anything to me? Why am I finding out at the last minute?" The man started asking, trying to get a confession. "What are you talking about?" "I do not understand what's going on," confusedly replied the girl. "Don't pretend. I mean that you can't have children," Steve blurted out. "What? Who told you that?" Maddie asked, shocked. "Your father. He told me about your diagnosis, and he thinks it makes me want to marry you." "I'm sorry, but it's over between us," Steve declared, dumping his fiancée on the eve of the wedding. Having said everything, he did not wait for Maddie's answer and left, despite the fact that the girl began to cry, not holding back emotions and grief from what she had been through. Realizing that the workday was continuing and she had been let go for a few minutes, the girl returned to the fitness center and, constantly wiping away her tears, struggled to work the day through to the end. Finishing her last workout, Maddie headed home to talk to her parents and find out if Steve, who was no longer answering her phone calls, was telling the truth. Hi. Is it true that I can't have children? Maddie asked from the doorstep when she saw her mother. Hi, daughter. Who told you that? Asked the mother, not expecting that the girl could know about it. My father talked to Steve, and when he found out, he left me. So is it true or not? Continued to ask Maddie, wanting to know the truth. Yes, daughter, it is indeed true. I'm sorry, we didn't want to tell you about it because we were afraid it might affect your psyche. 15 years ago, while winter fishing, you fell through the ice and froze to death. It didn't affect your health, you didn't even catch a cold, but it left an irreparable mark on your female health. I'm sorry, Selena replied, revealing what she had been hiding so carefully all this time. I'm going to the capital. I don't want to live here anymore, Maddie said, having discussed the family's secret with her mother and decided that she didn't want to cross paths with Steve or his acquaintances. I understand, but can't we wait for Dad first? Mom asked. Okay, Maddie replied, agreeing with her mother. In the evening, the family gathered and discussed what had happened. The father supported his daughter's decision and gave her money for the first time, so that Maddie could start a new life in the capital, and having rented an apartment, could quietly look for an apartment. Having coaxed with Maddie, Steve went to the nearest bar and, determined to forget about everything that happened to him, got drunk. He doesn't come home at night and doesn't show up for work in the morning. Several weeks pass, but no one can find the man because his cell phone is disconnected, and neither at home nor in the car repair shop do not know where he could have disappeared. Realizing that Steve has disappeared, the father once again comes to the workshop to talk to his son's boss and discuss their further plan of action. Thinking that something may have happened to him, John suggests calling the police and writing a report on Steve's disappearance. Hearing this, Austin realizes that the long drunkenness of his work colleague can turn into a real problem, not only for him, but also for those around him. Deciding to save the situation, Austin admits that he took pity on his friend and did not give him away to the chief, since Steve lives in his garage. Talking to Sergei Inokentьevich and John, Austin promises to talk to his friend and bring him home soon. Arriving at his garage, Austin tries once again to talk to his colleague and talk sense into him, as his parents have begun to sound the alarm and are ready to report him to the police if he does not return in the next few days. Deciding not to inconvenience his colleague and partner, Steve thanks Austin for his help and, having sobered up a bit, orders a cab home. Upon arrival, the man tried to quietly and stealthily make his way to his room, but he was unsuccessful as he knocked over everything in his path. Where have you been? The mother asked, seeing her son staggering and struggling to stand on his feet. He had been drinking and living in a friend's garage, Steve answered in a calm tone. Can you explain what happened? We were getting ready for the wedding, and you disappeared. Where's Maddie? We can't reach her, Mom continued, trying to figure out what's going on. Forget about Maddie, she's gone. We broke up with her. I'll do better than her. What do you mean forget? What happened? Did she dump you? No, I dumped her. She can't have kids. Why would I want her like that? Steve said, and not wanting to continue the conversation, went to his room to sleep and recover. Being under the constant control and supervision of his parents, Steve was able to pull himself together to get back to work and get on with his life. As time passes, things get worse as Steve continues to abuse alcohol, ignoring his boss and parents. This leads to constant scandals, but everyone is only disappointed in Paul, realizing that no words he hears and does not understand. Addicted to the bottle, the man could not drown out the pain and decided that it would be best to try to find a replacement for Maddie, finding an equally pretty girl. In his spare time, Steve has a promiscuous relationship and changes girls like a glove, but none of them can compare with Maddie, so the man drinks even more. Realizing that it is impossible to get results from Steve, John stops trusting the employee and removes him from serious work, making the man an assistant to Austin and Billy again. Having cut Steve's salary in half, John continues to keep him in the car service solely out of respect for his old comrade. The parents don't let up. After waiting for their son to come home from work, they invite him into the kitchen for another talk. "Son, how long will it last? It's been more than a year, and you still do not want to take the mind," tried to get through to Steve's worried mother. "Why are you bothering me? I know how to behave," Steve replied defiantly. "Why are you doing this to your mother? She's worried and wants what's best for you," Billy tried to calm his son down. "Give me a break. I know what's best for me. I don't want to hear or discuss anything," the son replied and left the house, again asking Austin to shelter him in the garage so that no one would interfere with his immoral lifestyle. A few weeks later, Steve returned home again, as he did not have enough money to drink, and his friends did not lend him any more, realizing that no one will return the debt. So several more years pass, during which Steve has not been able to find a girl, at least in something resembling or surpassing Maddie. John got tired of the drunkard and fired him, apologizing to his friend for being tired of his son. Steve wasn't going to look for a job for a while, but his parents insisted that he go for an interview and at least get a job as a security guard at some store. After receiving another rejection, Steve returned home and took a bottle of white water and turned on the news. A few minutes later, he saw a news report with a famous car racer. Oliver talked about his return to the big sport and admitted that one person had helped him in this. It was to this woman, who became his wife, that he decided to dedicate his first victory at the World Championship, which started in the capital. When Oliver introduced his wife, Steve was numb with surprise when he saw Maddie, holding the hands of two babies on the screen, and bit his lip in self-pity. Turning off the TV, he drifted off to sleep, but he couldn't sleep, having spent the most painful night of his life. Barely waiting until morning, Steve mustered up the courage to call Maddie. "Hello. Did you want something?" the woman asked, answering the phone. "Hi. Yes, I'd like to meet," Steve said, not expecting her to answer at all. "Okay, I don't mind. I'll be in the capital for 2 more days, if you want to come and talk," answered Maddie, and distracted by the children, hung up. Thinking that he should apologize for what he did a few years ago, Steve borrowed money from his father and, finding more or less decent clothes, went to the station. Arriving in the capital early in the morning, he called Maddie again to arrange a meeting. A couple hours later, Steve arrived at the agreed place and saw Maddie sitting at the far table. "Hi, good to see you," Steve said. "Hi, let's get to the point. What did you want to talk about?" replied Maddie, who clearly didn't have the time or desire for a long chat. "I wanted to apologize for something I did years ago. Since then, I haven't met any girl who can compare to you, and I realized that I did a huge stupid thing that I still regret. Don't beat yourself up, it's okay. Moreover, your act gave me a new life, and I'm grateful to you for that. At that moment, I was broken, because you left me on the eve of the wedding, and it seemed that life gave a crack. I decided to change my surroundings and start my life with a clean slate, so I moved to the capital and never regretted it. It was hard at first, but I managed to get into a sports rehabilitation center, where I realized myself as a specialist who is appreciated and respected. A few years ago, I met Oliver, who had survived a terrible accident that left his wife dead and him disabled. Taking him seriously, I did everything I could to get Oliver back on his feet, and in just a year I achieved a positive result. Having attached to me, he confessed his sympathy, and I, having avoided any attention from men for a long time, reciprocated it. It turned out that from his first marriage, he had 2 wonderful kids, whom I loved as my own, and admitted that I could not have children. Oliver was not embarrassed by this, and I became the mother of his sons, wonderful boys who made me happy. But you know what the most important thing is? Maddie asked, looking straight into the man's eyes. "And what is it?" Steve asked in a sad voice, realizing that Maddie met him only out of pity. "There was a hormonal disruption in my body, which can be called a miracle. I'm pregnant, and we're about to have another wonderful baby boy. As you can see, a diagnosis is not a judgment, and God alone knows what is in store for each of us."
He walked down the long corridor of the maternity hospital for the second hour. Andrew brought his wife. She was very weak. Doctors did not advise her at first, and then seeing her persistence and forbade her to give birth. With her heart condition, it was tantamount to murder. But she convinced the doctors, "I feel everything will be fine." My intuition has never failed me. When her husband brought her to the hospital, the doctors asked just in case. "Andrew, anything can happen. You know your wife's health. That's why I'm asking you now. Who will we save if something goes wrong?" "Of course, Lexi. And you think she can't handle it?" A grown man asked in a frightened voice. "Andrew, with your wife's health, anything's possible, but we'll keep our fingers crossed." It was out of the question that Lexi would give birth on her own, so only a C-section. She was covered in sweat, her fine curls stuck to her forehead. She tried to say something, but she had no strength. She was breathing often, and you could tell from her lips that she was asking. Soon, her beautiful long fingers dug into the snow-white sheet, and she bit her lips so hard from the pain that blood dripped from them. She was injected with a heart medication into her vein. She began to breathe more evenly and said she felt better. She was given anesthesia and labor began. When the first girl was taken out, the instruments showed cardiac arrest. She became violently ill. A cardiologist was by her side who knew what medications she was tolerating and what needed to be administered to make the labor successful. Everything they could do was done. When the doctors realized they were losing her, they began to save the second girl. Two tiny droplets, similar to each other, came into the world on Christmas Day. God gave them life, but took the life of their mom. The father was inconsolable. Life with his Lexi had been a blessing. Gentle, kind, she loved her husband and was devoted to him with all her aching heart. It was a model family. Shers took a nanny, a woman about 50 years old, who was with the children around the clock. They named the girls almost identically, Vivian and Vanessa. And since Vanessa was too long to pronounce, she was Vanessa at home. Nanny quickly learned to distinguish them because she knew a little secret. Vivian, the older by 5 minutes, had a small mole behind her right ear, and the younger Vanessa had the exact same one, but behind her left. She said this to Andrew, but he was even more confused. He tried to be homeless. There wasn't much Daddy could do for the girls yet, so he plunged headlong into work. He was obliged to provide his princesses with a trouble-free future. So the first thing he did was to buy a huge plot of land outside the city and start building a big house. He wanted it to be a family nest, for the girls to live here with their families. With this in mind, he built the house with 2 entrances. He decided that Vivian had a mole behind her right ear, so her entrance would be on the right, and Vanessa's would be on the left. Then everyone laughed at this idea, but when after 3 years, the mansion was built, everyone saw just a castle for princesses. The entrance consisted of 2 entrances. Above each of them were monograms in the form of the letters B and H. It was very unusual. When they entered these doors, there were 2 beautiful staircases on the right and left, leading to the second floor. Andrew tried to make everything in the house so that his girls would be comfortable. After the events described above, 17 years passed. The father did not dote on his girls. His life he never settled, did not find a woman who at least a little would be like his Lexi. His daughters grew up beautiful, and their father was worried about the increased attention from the male population, and he thought that they should be less at dubious events. So we talk about the characters of the girls, then better than a poet, and cannot say. Ice and fire. The eldest Vivian was bold, mischievous, and adventurous. The vast world mesmerized and beckoned her to herself, which cannot be said about Vanessa. Vivian, once a gypsy woman, said that she was not created for family life, but created for festivity and splendor, that her life would be full of adventure and loss, to which she replied that she didn't believe in that nonsense. She was very beautiful. This beauty was so bright, even bold. Despite her still very young age, she had the alluring look of an experienced woman and seductive plump lips. She was not shy to charm and seduce. She never went unnoticed. When not seen by her father, she painted her already seductive lips with bright red lipstick. Combined with her black hair, it looked a little vulgar, but there wasn't a man who would take his eyes off her in a bored way. She saw it, knew it, and sort of teased him by saying, "Yes, I am so beautiful, but I'm not yours. I am not so easily obtained, and only your glance is very little to be with me." But for all that, she was an excellent student. She read a lot, and she had a tongue that even her father couldn't outtalk her. Vivian kept everyone in suspense. One day, the chauffeur who drove him to work came to her father and said that there was no car in the garage. There was no one else to take the car besides Vivian. When Vanessa heard the roar of an approaching motor, she jumped out of the house and ran up to the garage. They stared at each other, one completely unhappy with her sister's behavior and the other satisfied that she could get away with it. "So, where did you learn to drive?" Vanessa asked her, but Vivian laughed merrily that her joke had succeeded. From the outside, it was striking that, despite the difference in the expression of their beautiful faces and the apparent recklessness of her older sister, they were alike as two drops of water. Looking at each other, it was as if they were looking in a mirror. Vanessa's character was completely different. With the same facial features, the same plump lips, she was modest, quiet. Like her mom, she was domestic, the kind you dream of marrying. Smart, beautiful, modest, she had it in her blood to take care of her family and friends. Vanessa was content with her home, her family, and following their traditions. The sisters were always very close. The girls loved each other very much, and Vanessa was always getting her older sister out of yet another trouble. She always found a reason to justify Vivian and, without hesitation, took the blame. Their father often lectured them, teaching them to be serious and responsible, even when temptations were great. Everything about them was unusual, and sometimes it seemed to those around them that there was only one person in front of them. But deep in their hearts, they realized that there were many differences between them. The girls finished school, and then their roads diverged. Victoria wanted to enter economics, and Vanessa wanted to become a teacher. "Why do you need this pedagogical school? Always these screaming children and miserable salaries you have to go where after studying you can get a good job, or even in the firm to my father, but teachers are definitely not needed there. Just think about it. Dad's not forever. Who's going to take care of the business? Nay, I don't know anything about business. Why would I go into it? You don't have to know anything about business. You can go to law school and then go to your dad's firm and work in the law department. That's not helping the family business." At the family council, it was decided that Vanessa would go to university to study law and Vivian to study economics. So the girls went to the same institute, but to different faculties. As soon as Vivian appeared at the faculty, she immediately divided everyone into two camps. Outspoken enemies and the same outspoken admirers. In the first group, according to the law of the genre, was all female students, and in the second, almost all young people, except those who considered themselves not worthy to be next to such a beauty. But strangely enough, the teachers were also divided into two camps. Female teachers, and they were the majority, noted too brazen appearance, hyper-confidence, frank outfits, and very beautiful appearance. But to be fair, they also noted her sharp mind and wit. The first year of the economics faculty practically repeated school subjects, so Vivian did not bother with preparation.
She had straight A's in all seminars and credits. That increased the number of envious people and therefore enemies. She was not afraid of this. She clearly knew what she wanted and went to her goal.
In the second year, special subjects were added, and one of them was financial management. Entering the classroom, the teacher looked around the group. On the second row, his attention was attracted by a searing brunette who looked at him with interest. "Hello, my name is Denial. I will be reading your course, Financial Management. The course is designed for the whole year in the summer session, the exam. There are no books on the subject, so my lectures will be my main source of knowledge on the subject. That's all I have so far. If you have any questions, at the end of the class, I will answer them all." And he began the lecture. Vivian wrote something down, but mostly looked at the new teacher. He was a man of about 35. She noted that he was only about 17 years older than her, which was nothing, tall and handsome. He reminded her immediately of the actor Kevin Costner. The resemblance was uncanny. She looked at him without taking her eyes off, which was very embarrassing. He noticed a beautiful brunette. It was hard to take his eyes off her too, but he was more experienced than this girl and could control himself. He was clearly attracted to her. At the end of the lecture, Denial, as promised, asked for questions that he was willing to answer. Everyone remained silent, but Vivian decided to ask, "Tell me, has anyone ever told you that you look like the artist Kevin Costner?" Everyone laughed. A little off topic, but I'll answer it so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Yes, it has been said more than once. I noticed some similarities myself, but they're very minor. Yes, indeed, said Vivian. You're much more interesting than he is. She finished without embarrassment. Thank you for your kind words, but that's the end of the matter. If you are not interested in anything else, I'll say goodbye. She didn't write down the lecture, so she took the notes from Jacques, who was the one who had the most fun with her. He was outwardly a very interesting guy, but he was too small for her. He tried to please her. He was her slave, and what she needed, with her temperament, was a man. 6 months passed. In that time, Vivian had learned a great deal about her favorite man, and that he had become her favorite, she did not even doubt. He was not married in this place. She sighed with relief. He had a rented apartment after the institute internship. He passed abroad and lived there for 2 years. She had enough of this information, the main thing of which was that he was free. And she launched an offensive, not thinking about the consequences. The sisters went to university by car. Vivian was driving. By this time, she had finished driving lessons and was very confident behind the wheel. It was obvious that she liked to drive, but as a person who was fond of driving, she had exceeded the speed limit more than once. But in some surprising way, without involving her father, she dealt with the situation on her own. The winter session was coming up, and Vivian was not nervous at all because there was no subject that would be difficult for her. She couldn't think of an excuse to be alone with Daniel. But one day, the thought occurred to her to slash his tires and offer her services, a ride home. She'd asked a local thug who always hung out around the corner for a smoke and a beer. Having paid a little and having shown the victim car, she calmly went to lectures. Coming out of the uni, she saw Daniel, who was circling the car and lamenting about the 3 flat tires. "Ma," Vivian said in surprise. "Who did you hurt so badly?" "I was thinking the same thing. There were no credits, no exams. It was just someone who fell in love," Daniel said with a smile. You say it so confidently, as if it wasn't the first time." "No, it's the first time. I was going to offer you a ride home, but now I don't know. You'll think I did it on purpose to get you in the car." "That's exactly what I think, but I'll ask you to drive me home. But please wait. I'll call a tow truck." She was so embarrassed that he'd figured her out in a heartbeat. They rode in the car and were silent. "Where should I take you?" Vivian asked. He gave an address. As they drove up to his house, she didn't want to leave him. He felt it. He had the same desire. But Daniel knew it was wrong, that she was still a child and he shouldn't go along with his feelings. He was an experienced man. He'd had women. He knew his way around them, but in this case, he knew he had to stop. Vivian expected Daniel to say thank you and leave. So ahead of him, she asked, "What are you paying with? What do you need? I can offer you money." And he saw the nose wrinkle on her pretty face. "I can buy you a coffee. There's a nice cafe around the corner." She shook her head, showing that it wasn't that. "Then you talk to me, I'll do it." "Are you sure you'll do it?" And she, plucking up her courage, "Nah, kiss me." She did not take her eyes away, but looked straight at him. She had the tantalizing look of an experienced woman. Her bright lips attracted like a magnet. He wanted it too, but the fruit was forbidden, and that fueled the passion even more, and he couldn't stand it. He pulled her to him, gently at first, just touching her face and lips, and began to cover her with kisses. He realized from her reaction that this was her first time. He knew how to bring a woman to ecstasy, and when he felt she was all his, they merged in a passionate kiss. She was dizzy with happiness. She didn't even realize it could be so pleasurable. When he wanted to let her go, she didn't let him, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck and pulling him against her. Lenissa loved going to law school. She thought she would regret her career as an educator. But no, she loved college life. Despite the fact that she was as beautiful as Vivian, she had friends and girlfriends, on the background of which her beauty was even more expressive. She was respected by teachers for her intelligence, poise, and excellent grades. Many boys liked her, but she herself was not in a hurry with relationships. Her favorite phrase, "all in due time." The second course brought a lot of new subjects, new difficulties, and a lot of new things. Vanessa sat at the textbooks to make sense of it all. And once she saw it, her father offered the help of his lawyer, who works at the firm. He will explain everything to you in simple, accessible language, and examples will be given. Don't say no. It's real help. Vanessa was happy for any help, so she agreed. Just before the session, a young man about 25 years old, wearing glasses, which suited him very well, came to them and introduced himself. My name is Aaron. You could just call me Aaron. I work as a lawyer for your father, Andrew. I really want to help you pass the session on excellent, but now I doubt whether I will succeed. Your beauty distracts me, and even my thoughts get confused, but I'll get used to it. I'll get myself under control and will succeed. With these words, he sat down at the table, laid out his books, and said, I'm ready. Ask me any questions. Vanessa took the tickets and, without wasting any time, started with the first one. They had been called for lunch 3 times already, but their preparation was going so well that they only came for dinner. Vanessa was very grateful to Aaron. She was confident in her knowledge and was not afraid of the exam. Aaron came a couple more times. There were still some questions, which, with his help, were quickly solved. The session began. Vanessa was prepared, but Aaron was worried about his ward, so he came to the university to support her. When she came out with the credit card, with the mark A, he wrapped her in his arms and congratulated her. Flowers appeared from somewhere, which raised the girl's mood even more. They went for a walk along the embankment. The weather was beautiful. They wanted to sing and shout with joy. Aaron invited her to a cafe. They drank a glass of champagne, drank coffee, ate ice cream, and Vanessa felt so tired that she asked Aaron to take her home. At home, she collapsed into bed and didn't get up until lunchtime the next day. She hadn't seen Vivian in a while, so she went to her room to chat. Her sister was still asleep. She lay down next to her and Vivian woke up immediately. Hi, sis. With such warmth and love, Vanessa said. Hi, Vanessa. How are you doing? How's the session? Vivian asked before she opened her eye. I'm fine. I'm passing with flying colors so far. I wanted to tell you I think I'm in love. Sleep is gone. Who is he? Where did you meet him? My sister started asking with a vigor. No. He's Aaron, my dad's lawyer. He's been helping me study for my exams. Yesterday, he came to cheer me on, and when I got an A, he gave me flowers and invited me to a... He's so gentle, so interesting, and I feel he likes me too. What do you see in that boring guy? I think he's so boring. He's a drag. Vanessa stood up abruptly and left her sister's room. She's so abrupt, only her opinion is considered unquestionable. She never learned to consider others. If she likes something, take it out and put it down, and don't give a damn about others. So thought the offended Vanessa, wiping her tears. But Vivian was already running after Vanessa to apologize. She realized that she had overreacted. She'd gotten too personal and had to apologize to her sister. Vanessa, honey, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Well, you know me. You know me. The tongue is my enemy. I'm sorry. I love you very much. You couldn't hold a grudge against her for long. She was such a suck-up. She could find so much to say for herself that Vanessa couldn't help but forgive her. I also want to tell you something important and very secret, and Vivian told her about Daniel, which made Vanessa speechless. You're crazy. He's a teacher. How are you going to face him in lectures, credits, and exams? He's twice your age. He should be married by now, and you're still a child. Vivian, you've upset me. I'm going to worry about you now. What a grown man wants from a young girl, don't you know? And I do, Vivian replied firmly. I want that too. I love him and I'd do anything for him. And if you get pregnant, what are you going to do? This is very serious, sister. So end this relationship before it's too late. You're as boring as your Aaron. You don't realize that the heart doesn't understand orders. You stop loving him, that's all. You can't tell it to stop loving him. It loves and is ready for any sacrifice, Vivian explained to her sister. After the conversation, they went to their rooms. Vanessa thought about Aaron again, remembered every detail of their walk, and did not agree with Vivian that he was an uninteresting person. He seemed to her to be a well-read, cultured man. It was just that he and Vivian had different tastes. Vivian longed for a closer relationship with Daniel. She gave him a few more rides home while his car was being repaired, and each time she said goodbye, he paid her back with a kiss. Each time they became even more passionate and prolonged, which fueled the passion between the young people. But Daniel had a way of stepping on the throat of his own song, and that was the end of it. Vivian was angry with him, but she couldn't help it. He wouldn't invite her to his house, citing the mess of not having a woman's hand in it. It was the end of the second year, and the exam on financial management was coming up. Vivian was ready for it and was not worried at all. She heard whispers behind her back that Daniel was going to give her an A, but she ignored them. When she got the ticket, she didn't even prepare for it, but decided to answer at the board. She answered perfectly. Everyone who sat in the audience mouths dropped open. For the sake of order, the teacher asked her a few questions, which she answered. Another adorned her report card. As she left the building, she decided to wait for Daniel, but she saw his car, which meant he wasn't going with her today. Maybe another flat tire. She felt funny that she couldn't think of anything more interesting to do. Getting into the car, she drove home. When Daniel's exam was over, he felt very tired, but after taking a breath of fresh air, he perked up. Noticing that there was no Vivian's car in the parking lot, he felt sad. He would have liked to see her, to praise her for her excellent knowledge. He realized he missed her. Without expecting himself, he decided, "Vivian, I wanted to compliment you on your excellent knowledge. I'm pleased that you love my subject." "I loved you first, and then the subject," Vivian answered. "You are my favorite student too." "I've never had one, probably won't have any more," said Daniel sadly. "It's like you're saying goodbye to me," Vivian asked. "Yes. I'm going abroad tomorrow. I won't be back until September." "So goodbye, Vivian." "What are you going to do abroad?" "My parents are there. They're not young anymore. I have to visit them." "I'm going to visit them." "Can I come with you?" "I'll rent an apartment, and in my free time, we'll go for walks, and you'll show me the local beauty." "How do you like my idea?" "Am I good?" "I don't think it's a good idea because I won't have time to go out with you. I'll be busy." "Me? Where are you going?" "Nay, Spain." "Really?" "We have a house in Spain." "I won't even have to rent an apartment. I'll live at home." "What city are you in?" He didn't want to tell Vivian all this. Besides his parents, he had friends there and not just men. Nayla he had serious views on. She was a serious and very nice girl. He liked her. Daniel's mom wanted them to be together, so pretty Vivian would be an obvious choice. "No, Vivian, I'm sorry, but no. I don't need to see you." "I understand you have a woman you're going to see, and I'm in the way. Is that right?" She waited fearfully for an answer. "Yes, Vivian, you're right. And besides, you and I are not a couple at all. I'm much older than you. You still have a long way to go. Goodbye." Tears dripped from her eyes. She couldn't see anything and stopped to avoid an accident. "I'm still going to Spain, and tomorrow too. I have my passport and tickets are no problem." Her mood immediately improved and she went home. When she went into her father's office, she said she was going to Spain tomorrow. She would have a vacation, swim in the sea. She passed on an excellent session and well-deserved a vacation. Andrew didn't mind. Vanessa didn't mind either. There was only one flight to Spain tomorrow, and the tickets were booked for it. Even from a distance, she saw Daniel, but she didn't want him to see her. Since they were business class passengers, they boarded without waiting in line. And they had a separate minibus that took them down the runway. And they got on the plane first, because Daniel was flying economy class, and they didn't meet. Once they were in the air, Vivian told her sister why there was such a rush. Told her that Daniel was on the plane, also going to Spain. She asked her sister to go to their house alone and she would come over later. She should see where Daniel was going. Vanessa disagreed for a long time, but there was no use arguing with Vivian. She ran after Daniel so she wouldn't lose sight of him. He was met by a girl. Small in stature, a little pudgy, pretty, but she's a long way from me, she thought arrogantly. Maybe it was a sister or an acquaintance. They walked to the bus and Vivian kept up. When they got off the bus, they immediately ducked into a cab. While she was looking for a car, they had already pulled away, but she told the cab driver which car to follow. It was getting dark, and when her car stopped, she saw that a completely different person had gotten out of the car they were following. The cab driver had mixed up the cars and followed the other one. Vivian looked around. Everything was unfamiliar. The cab driver was gone. What should she do? The neighborhood didn't look like a rich one. There were small houses all around, and she realized that she had to get out of here quickly. She went in the direction where the cab had gone. She wanted to ask how to get to the bus, but she didn't meet anyone. A group of young men and girls were walking towards her. She asked them how to get to the bus, but she didn't remember anything else. She woke up in some dirty shed. She had a headache and smelled terrible. It felt like there was a toilet nearby. When her eyes got used to the darkness, she realized she was in a shed with a hole in the roof and a toilet pit next to it. She wanted to get up, but her legs were tied with duct tape. She didn't have her phone, money, or purse with her. Her hands were stiff from the duct tape, so she tried to tear it with her teeth and free herself. when she freed her hands and started to untie her legs. At that moment, a man entered the shed and explained in broken English that she should not hurry anywhere. They had her passport, phone, and money. Where did such a beautiful girl come from? I'm from Chicago. Let me go. No, we need a bird like that for ourselves. You'll work and give us the money, but if you run away, we'll catch you and ruin your pretty face. You'll get in trouble. You'll be in trouble. They're already looking for me and they'll find me. So you better let me go. I can give you money. I have a rich dad. If I call him and he'll send it to me. Give me the phone and you'll be rich soon. No, pretty girl, you'll earn us more with your sweet spot than your daddy will pay us once. So wait for the owner to come and decide. She realized she was in deep shit. And for the first time in her life, she didn't know what to do, so she was scared. Not waiting for Vivian, by nightfall, she called Andrew. Daddy, something's happened to Vivian. I can feel it. Come quickly. I can't do it alone. Andrew left on a private flight with the security guys. They had worked in intergroups many times and had solved such complicated and intricate cases that Andrew had no doubt they would help. They'd figure it out faster because they knew what they were doing so well. Vanessa met her father in tears, all the time saying the same thing, that Vivian is in danger. Glad she could feel it and she had to hurry. She was taken with her to show the place where they had parted with Vivian and where she had gone next. After examining the place and seeing the many video cameras, they drove to the Spanish police station. After examining the footage, they saw Vivian getting on a bus. They followed the route of that bus, then examined other video footage. There was a clear view of Vivian catching a cab. After discerning the license plate number, they quickly found a cab driver who remembered well where he had taken the beautiful girl yesterday. Half an hour later, they were there. The cab driver, looking around cautiously, said in broken English to look in the barns and the yards. And here the Spanish police refused to help, citing that the girl is an adult, came here on her own. No one forced her, and they will not attract people for who knows what. Andrew offered them money and a lot of it, but they left. The boys decided to act on their own. Shabby houses, no different from the barns in the yard, was a great number, but not so that they could not be examined. It was nearing the end of the day, and the search yielded nothing. Vanessa kept calling and asking how he was doing. But her father, unfortunately, could do nothing to please her. They were sitting down on a bench. They decided to make a plan of further action if they did not find Vivian in these barns. Suddenly, they saw 5 men emerge from the farthest shed, which they had not yet examined. When they were out of sight, the boys rushed in. The barn was dark and smelled terrible, but they saw Vivian. She was huddled in the corner, screaming in English, "Don't come near me." Then they called Andrew, and she recognized him and started crying hysterically. They brought her out into the light. She was all bruised and bloody. They beat her, tore all her clothes, and raped her as she did not resist. Decided to go to the police station and show what had been done to the Chicago citizen. Oddly enough, the police were not surprised and said she came voluntarily to this criminal neighborhood. She was not dragged there by anyone. She knew what might be waiting for her there. How could she have known what was waiting for her? She was looking for a friend. Why didn't she take the same cab back to the city? She saw the neighborhood she was in. She came here on purpose to find adventure. If she'd been kidnapped, there'd be a crime, but here we don't see a lineup. Do you think it's normal for a girl to be in this state? If she'd enjoyed the adventure, she wouldn't have resisted. She'd have satisfied everyone, and she wouldn't have been beaten up like that. But she was raped. Is that normal in your country? Andrew wanted to leave the police station as soon as possible and come home. Vanessa met her sister in tears and wanted to hug her, but Vivian pushed her away and ran to the bathroom. 2 hours passed, but the sister didn't come out. Everyone started worrying and banging on the door. Finally, the boys broke the lock and went into the bathroom. Vivian was lying there staring dumbly at the ceiling with completely lifeless eyes. There was nothing like Vivian had been 2 days earlier. When she finally got out of the bathtub and changed her clothes, her father decided not to stay here anymore, but to go to Chicago. Vivian would need good psychological help and maybe even psychiatric help. She, at home, she locked herself in her room, refused to come out for 24 hours, refused to eat. Her father called their home doctor, a fairly elderly woman with a lot of experience, that she should be seen by a gynecologist for pregnancy, take tests to make sure she hadn't contracted any diseases, and definitely a psychologist. I will recommend you a very good specialist who pulled people out of terrible situations. Of course, there is not much good, but don't worry. She is young, healthy, time will pass, and she will come to her senses. She refused to go to the doctor. She became hysterical. So another week passed, but her condition didn't improve. The doctor, Laurel, said to give her sleeping pills and take her to the doctor. It's her health. Don't procrastinate. Andrew had arranged with the doctor in advance, and when Vivian was brought in, she was immediately admitted, examined, and tests were taken. They took blood from a vein at once so that the tests would be more accurate. When Vivian woke up, she was already in her bed. Nothing worse than waiting. Vanessa was very nervous for her sister. She had gotten gaunt, wouldn't leave the house, and kept waiting for Vivian to call her to her bedside. 3 days later, they got a call from the hospital saying that the tests were ready. Vanessa went to the hospital and from there to Laurel to see what the tests said. After seeing the tests, the doctor reassured Vanessa. She is not pregnant. Already good, there are no STIs. It is too early to check for AIDS. In a month and a half, we will take a second blood test. So it's not that bad. Now we can look at her morale. Vanessa told me all this at home. Everyone cheered up a bit. The news wasn't bad after all. Laurel gave the psychologist's phone number and told her not to hesitate to invite him to see Vivian. It had been a week since Vivian had been home, but her condition was terrible. Suddenly, Vanessa had the idea to call Daniel, to tell him about Vivian. Maybe he could help. But she forgot that her purse, where her passport, money, and phone were, had been taken from her by her rapists. But she wouldn't give up. The university wouldn't tell her the phone number, but her dad would be lucky. He got Daniel's phone number through some acquaintances, and Vanessa called him. When he heard the whole story, he was horrified. Why did she do it? Why didn't she tell me? He had many questions, but Vanessa didn't know the answers to them. So interrupting him, she asked, "You're coming to help your sister?" "I won't be able to until a week from now. I'll pick up my mom from the hospital, and then I'll be out of here." "Okay, call me as soon as I can." "Okay. Call me when you get there. I'll give you the address." It took Daniel a long time to get over what he'd heard. Poor girl, what she'd been through. He had to help her. His soul was aching. He couldn't forget what Vanessa had told him. Daniel arrived as promised a week later. He was very worried. What would he tell her? How would he reassure her? But when he entered the room, everything became clear and simple. She recognized him immediately and even wanted to smile, but she didn't really succeed. But why was his heart beating so hard? Why were his palms sweating? Did he really have any feelings for her? She was also beautiful. Only her current beauty wasn't as bright, but still, she was good. Her eyes were very sad because her heart was sad. Her soul with the sad eyes was searching among the other eyes for a soul who could hear her sadness and comfort her. He did not see that Vivian, whose eyes played with devils, and every minute her head was full of crazy ideas, when he sat down on her bed, and she put her arms around his neck and sat so long. He felt that she was crying. No, come on, why these tears? You have such beautiful eyes, and tears make it hard to see them. She put her palms on his face, looked at him for a long time, and kissed him on the lips. It was so sincere and tender that Daniel pressed her against him, whispered in her ear that everything would be okay, and kissed her too. It wasn't a passionate and long kiss, but it was precious to her. She was coming to her senses and felt loved in spite of everything. "No, it's easy. Let's go for a walk around the house. I'll take you on the swings." "Oh, I don't have the strength," Vivian said quietly. "And I'll carry you in my arms and put you on the swing." "No, all right," she said, smiling for the long day she had spent in this room. The whole household sat downstairs waiting for Daniel to come out and tell them everything. But when they saw him carrying Vivian in his arms outside, there was a mute scene. Everyone turned their heads as if on cue, seeing them off with a look. They walked for a long time until Vivian was cold. Back, she quietly walked by herself. He walked her to her room and put her in bed. She looked up at him and immediately fell asleep. Daniel went downstairs where everyone was still waiting for him. "Thank you, Daniel. Vanessa thought to call you, and it was a good idea. Her daughter is better now that you're here." Andrew spoke. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off Vanessa. "You two look so much alike, like two peas in a pod." "You have a double happiness, Andrew." Bertrand said goodbye and said he'd come back tomorrow. All night, Victoria dreamed of a gypsy woman who reminded her of their first meeting, that she was the one who predicted everything. "Let me tell you another fortune," said the gypsy. "No, don't. I'm afraid of you," Vivian screamed. "Go away. Don't scare me." Vanessa heard her shout because their rooms were next to each other. She touched her shoulder and her sister woke up. Her forehead was "I'm thirsty," she said. Vanessa quickly ran to get a bottle of water and gave it to her sister. "Me." "Where is Daniel?" Vivian asked in a weak voice. He will come later," he promised. It was July outside the window and the weather was like fall. It had been raining since morning and it was chilly. Vivian didn't want to eat, but she was sleepy. Her head fell on the pillow and sleep again took her in its soft and gentle embrace. Again, she dreamed of the gypsy woman. Your misfortunes are not yet over, you have." At this point, Vivian woke up. She was breathing heavily in her arms. Her hands were shaking as if she had Parkinson's disease. She couldn't calm down for a long time, afraid to close her eyes and see the gypsy woman again, who would tell her what trouble still awaited her. Still no Daniel. She sat down on the bed, slid her feet to the floor, and walked leisurely out of the room. For the first time in a long time, she sat at the communal table and ate lunch. "What's taking Daniel so long?" she asked Vanessa. "Let's call him," and her sister started dialing his number. But the caller was unavailable. Vivian started to get nervous, crying and saying that he was disgusted with her after the rape. At the same time, Daniel's Carvaz 2109, following the highway in the direction of Vivian's house, kept to the left side and did not exceed the speed limit. The road was difficult. It was raining. The driver of the truck drove on the side of oncoming traffic, failed to cope with the control, and collided with the car Hyundai Accent, and that in turn rammed the car Daniel. He made a few circles on the car and drove into the ditch. Fortunately, the car did not overturn. After hitting his head, he lost consciousness. When the doctors arrived, they took him out of the car, gave him first aid, and took him to the hospital for a CT scan to rule out brain damage. Clean and teeming, he was able to call Vivian and tell her what had happened to him. Vanessa went to visit him, and Erin volunteered to accompany her. Daniel's head was bandaged, but he felt fine. 3 days later, he was at Vivian's, but he had to get there by cab. His car was being repaired. He had to wait a little while because she had a psychologist. Vivian looked much better. A blush appeared on her cheeks when she saw Daniel. She smiled her white-toothed smile. There was a sparkle in her eyes. The old Vivian was coming back. Smart, beautiful, confident girl. There was still a month left before school started, and Daniel was supposed to return to Spain, but only for a couple of weeks. She was sad and already missing him. She imagined they would talk on the phone for long periods of time, and he would finally tell her that he loved her very much. Despite their good relationship, Daniel was afraid of them. The age difference intimidated him, talking at the university. A professor's connection with a student would make so much noise. He didn't know how to do the right thing so as not to ruin the girls. After all, she had just turned 19. In fact, she was a child. He will still have time to think about this difficult question, but Andrew, as if he realized that the young man has difficulties with the decision of the question and decided to help. "Daniel, do you like Vivian as a woman, or are you just helping her out of her depression?" "Vivian is great. I like her a lot. But do I have the right to get my hopes up? I'm almost twice her age. What will she need me for in 10 years? She'll only be 29 and I'll be almost 50. Do you think I can take advantage of a girl's crush?" It's a complicated question. All I want is for my daughter to be happy. And with you around, I can see her happy. Let's not rush things. I'm leaving now. And when I return, I'll solve this issue. Goodbye and goodbye to your beautiful girl. Nye. Thank you, Daniel, and have a nice soft landing. Daniel flew to Spain the day his mother was discharged from the clinic. In the evening, the family gathered around the table. Nelly had prepared a delicious dinner. Daniel had bought wine and snacks, and the evening had been very heartwarming and warm and delicious. Nelly kept glancing at Daniel, but he avoided meeting her gaze. She wanted him to propose at dinner and tell her parents. But after meeting Vivian, he didn't want to rush into it. Something was stopping him from making a final decision in his relationship with Nelly. By the end of the evening, she realized that there would be no marriage proposal, and her mood dropped to zero. She'd gotten out of the room quickly, saying things couldn't wait. No one held her back, didn't ask her to stay. Daniel walked her to the door and with a peck on the cheek said goodbye. He didn't explain anything to his parents. He had to think about everything himself. At 35, Daniel should have gotten married a long time ago. Vivian was clearly too young for that. She needs to learn. He's sure she's mistaking a crush for great love. A young girl who dreams of the role of a wife may very soon be disappointed in this status. After all, romantic relationships and marriage are far from the same things. There will no longer be secret meetings, kisses with hindsight. There will not be that adrenaline that plays in the blood. Family life will begin in which everyone has their own responsibilities, but the husband to earn money and provide for the family, to do men's housework, and the wife to cook, to wash, to give birth. A man should make life easier for a woman, and he would do it by all means, but won't family life be a burden for a young girl who has not yet had her fill, has not had her fill? He, as an adult man, knows what he wants. The storm of hormones has already been experienced. So in a woman, he appreciates not only the appearance, attractiveness, but rather her inner world, her willingness to follow such values as family, children. Vivian is hardly ready for all this. And one more thing worried him. Very beautiful Vivian. Of course, jealousy is inherent in many men, but when following such a woman, men wring their necks will not give him peace. Despite the fact that he, as a man, has become both professionally and financially, and it would seem, confident in himself. The feeling of jealousy is not alien to him, and with Vivian, he'll always live like a volcano. That's what Daniel thought lying in his room, about his future relationship with Vivian. His thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was Nayeli. There was still no avoiding the conversation, and he answered it. Yes, Nayeli, is something wrong? Yes, it is. I want to ask you, is there not going to be a marriage proposal? Don't feel sorry for me, just tell it like it is. Don't keep me on a short leash or on reserve. You know how I feel about you, and I don't deserve to be treated like I don't exist and we haven't agreed on anything. Daniel didn't interrupt her the whole time, but listened intently. He realized she was right, but he didn't understand what was holding him back from proposing to her. Nayeli, give me a couple or 3 more days and I'll make up my mind. No offense. Is that a deal? Or deal, and she was the first to disconnect. His mind went back to his thoughts. Nayeli is 29 years old. She's accomplished as a professional, financially independent, self-sufficient. The best age to get married and have children. She's a decent person, kind, sincere, loves children. And how does she cook? You can't beat it. She's not beautiful, but she's pretty. Here she is, a ready wife and future mother to your children. What's there to think about? If you marry Nayeli, you will never regret your choice, said the inner voice with which he always liked to argue. You've known her for years, a trusted companion, and importantly, your parents like her. Yes, that's true. His mom, Jezebel, told him to marry Nayeli, that's all. And you like her yourself, because you have to go to bed with her, not your mom, the inner voice advised. Before I met Vivian, I thought I loved her. Well, then it's settled. Call and propose, commanded the inner voice. I will. Nayeli is my man, but Vivian will meet her prince. He will be younger, prettier, and of course, he will love her very much, because it is impossible not to love such a beautiful woman. The next day, he called Nayeli and invited her to visit him. Taking her by the hand, he went up to his parents and said, Mom, Dad, I'm getting married. This is my future wife. Do you bless me for my union with her? And his parents said yes. They decided to get married on New Year's Day. Every year on the 31st, they would celebrate their family day. Nayeli was happy because there was no one in her life she loved more than Daniel. Her dream had come true and she would soon be Nayeli. Tyler sounds like it. She loved everything about Daniel from the university. Daniel quit because he realized that Vivian had no brakes. She would wait for him, worry. He would just feel sorry for this girl who had already been through too much lately. Just before the school year, he called her, congratulated her, wished her success and excellent marks. She spoke to him quite cheerfully, so she was in a good mood. After that, he threw away the old SIM card and inserted a new one. He noted to himself that he did it all with regret, but there was no turning back. Family life was ahead, and it was necessary to prepare for it morally. They applied to the registry office and began to prepare for the wedding. He moved to live with Nayeli. She had her own apartment and he had a rented one. They were not going to have a big wedding. They would rather spend the money at a ski resort in fabulous Switzerland. Both were skiing well, so there were no disputes about where to go. At the Swiss resort, the young wanted to celebrate the new year once again, preparing for the wedding, for the new year, invitations to guests. All this made our newlyweds twirl and turn, but there was really a lot to do. Daniel helped Nayeli and everything. Friends did not sit idle either. September 1st, 3rd year. How quickly time flies. Just out of high school with Vanessa and already in her 3rd year of college. The first thing she did was to look at the schedule of the 2nd year to see when she could see Daniel. His class was scheduled 3 times a week. Like us, nothing in the schedule had changed. I'll come by tomorrow and say hello. I miss him so much, Vivian thought languidly, closing her eyes. She didn't even notice that the name of the teacher was different from the name of the subject. She was so engrossed in the upcoming meeting that she bumped her forehead against Jacko's. "No, look how mature you've become. What a handsome man. What shoulders, Jax. You should go into modeling. You look really good. Do you really like me? Maybe we could go out, celebrate the beginning of school." "No, Zaniechka, I don't mean like you. You're handsome, no argument, but you're not mine. As a friend, I won't give you to anyone. Got it?" "Understood," Jax said with a faded look. While they were talking to Jax, dozens of guys' eyes opened wider at the sight of Vivian, especially the freshman. "Pretty girl. What year are you in now?" the older ones asked. Go, you're still young," answered them the girl. The next day, she chose her outfit more carefully. Her makeup was minimal. She knew that Daniel liked it better. As she approached the auditorium where he was supposed to have his lecture, she waited stubbornly for him. Students came in. Many she knew and said hello, but here a man showed up. But it wasn't denial. He came to the door and asked Vivian, "Will you be coming in?" "No, I'm looking for Daniel. I don't know who he is. I'm sorry." She rushed to the dean's office. "Tally, honey, where's Daniel?" "Well, he quit back in the summer." "He quit. Do you know where he went?" "No, nobody knows exactly, but they say he quit teaching. He's working as a consultant for some firm. I don't know which one." She didn't know what to compare her condition to. She'd been run over by a skating rink. "She's dead, she's gone." "Is he disgusted with me after what happened?" "Well, he realizes it could happen to anyone. Not just anyone. It could happen to you. Because you're reckless." The inner voice couldn't bear not to hear. "You shut up, nobody's asking you." "I'm sick of being without you," Vivian sharply retorted. She didn't want to study anymore today. She went to Vanessa's faculty, broke her out of class, and they went for a walk, eating ice cream and talking. Yeah, talking, because that's what she needed most right now. How could he, Vanessa, say nothing and just disappear from my life? "But you should call him," her sister said. She dialed his number, but there was no answer. He changed his SIM card. "Listen, I know where he lives. Let's go." "Well, let's go," Vanessa said reluctantly. She didn't like this situation. It was high time her sister calmed down and moved on. It was not her man. There were other people living in the apartment where the previous tenant had gone. They had no idea. Her last hope of finding Daniel was gone. She hadn't been to the university for the third day, lying there with her arms stretched out along her torso. Vanessa sat next to her, talking to her the whole time. "Vanessa, well, if he didn't want to commit his personal life to me, we could have stayed friends, couldn't we? What do you think?" "Oh, I think it's a bad idea." "Why do you think that?" "Because you're not ready for it. It's just that you'd be trying to keep him in your own life with the hope of getting him back. Well, think about it. Would you be able to handle that kind of friendship? I bet you'd want more than that, wouldn't you?" Vivian was silent for a long time and then answered, "Yes, I'd get him with this friendship. And we'd probably become enemies." "That's what I'm saying." "Vanessa, maybe I should find a replacement for him. I have a lot of choices at the university." "No, dear sister, you shouldn't. Take a rest. Realize the experience, analyze the former relationship so you don't make mistakes later. Don't get yourself worked up. Do not build yourself a jilted bride, by the way, which you have never been. Minimize the tragedy of the situation. Nothing fatal happened. No. Look, Vanessa, maybe I should go to a fortune teller." Max, you're losing your mind. You don't need a fortune teller. Daniel didn't promise you anything. He said you're not a couple. Didn't he? Isn't that right? That's it. Go to sleep and go to school tomorrow. Okay? Yes, tomorrow for school. Thank you, sis. You're welcome. They kissed and left to meet again tomorrow. 5 years had passed since the above events. During this time, the girls graduated from university and worked for Andrew at the firm. Vanessa was a senior lawyer in the department, and Vivian headed the economic department, and very successfully. She was a strict boss, sometimes even harsh, but everyone loved her because Victoria Andreevna was fair. She always helped her employees and noticed good work. Vanessa was getting ready to get married. Aaron proposed to her and she agreed. Vivian, on the other hand, was never able to give her heart to someone. She still hadn't gotten over denial, even though she hadn't seen him since and he hadn't made himself known. She searched for him on social media but couldn't find him. He even contacted the computer aces, but they said he wasn't registered there, and Denial lived and worked not that far from Vivian. He married Naili and they had a son, Pete, and a daughter, Vivian. One day, while sorting through the piles of magazines that were already falling out of her nightstand, Vivian saw a 3-year-old family magazine that she bought on an occasional basis. On the front cover, she saw Daniel with his wife and children. Inside on the spread was a huge article about the Queen family, "In the Art of Being a Family." That was the title of the article. Why hadn't she seen this magazine before? How could it have passed her by? Vivian read it several times in a row. A welcoming atmosphere reigns in the family of Daniel and Nayeli Tyler. Their friendly family consists of 4 people: mom, dad, darling daughter, Vivian's son, Pete. As the head of the family, Daniel told us, he knew his wife from the Institute. He could not resist such a beauty. The wedding was played. Every time she read to this point, she threw the magazine and began to remember again and again their meetings with Daniel. Daniel's son is 2 years old and his daughter is a year old. So now the kids are 5 and 4 years old. Why did he name his daughter Vivi? Isn't there any other name? So he wanted to leave a memory of her, or maybe love. She asked her father to get Daniel's address from the magazine editor. She just wanted to meet him and talk to him. Dad sent a public relations woman to the magazine's editor, very knowledgeable, very talkative, explained the situation to her in general terms. "All right, Andrew, I'll try to help you." A week went by. My father had some very interesting information. He didn't know how to tell his daughter. Knowing her impulsive nature, he kept putting off talking about it. But Vivian felt that her father knows something, but she does not tell her. So one day she went to his office and told him she wouldn't leave until he told her. It started by saying that Daniel was a widower. No. What? What did you say? He's raising the kids alone. Vivian, sit down and calm down. That's why I didn't want to tell you as long as possible. No. Stop it, Dad. Talk to me. I'm nervous enough as it is. Yes, I am. Her father, knowing his crazy daughter who was pacing the office from corner to corner, asked her to sit down and not to rush him. Taking a deep breath, he began to tell what he had learned about. 3 years ago, his wife, Nayeli, was the editor of this magazine. She was described as a good person and knowledgeable. 3 years ago, she and other staff members were in an area contaminated by radiation. Nayeli decided to interview those who were left behind to live with their families in those areas. There was a terrible mortality rate there, especially child deaths. But people had nowhere to go and stayed in their homes. There was a huge article about these families, children in her magazine. The authorities, before this article, did not want to recognize this problem, but Natalia disrupted this anthill and these families began to help. But after a year, she herself began to feel bad. At first, she wrote it all off as fatigue, but when it became unbearable, she went to the doctor. She was diagnosed with cancer, already at the 2nd stage. She underwent surgery, and a year later she relapsed. After more surgeries and chemotherapy, she died last year. Daniel was left with 2 children. Since his parents are in Spain, his mom Nayeli came to visit him. She now lives in his house and helps with the children. He works a lot. He has to support the house and the 2 children. It's not easy. That's about it, I guess. Did she get his address or phone number? I did, but I don't think you should call him, let alone go to his place. The kid's grandmother might not like it. It hasn't been that long yet. Wait, don't rush him. Dad, I want to offer to help. Vivian, you know you can't do anything to help. Distracting him from the kids, making him nervous, yes, but he doesn't need that yet. He's still fresh in his mind. Vivian knew her father was right, but she was afraid of losing him again. A man like that would never be ignored by a woman, but she decided to wait. A couple of times she went to his house and saw him from afar. She saw the children greeting him, Nayeli's mother walking with them. But she had the good sense not to get out of the car, but to watch from the sidelines. 6 months later, without saying anything to her father, she drove up to his house. And when she saw him get out of the car, she went out to meet him. Well, hello, Danielle. How long I've waited for this meeting. But if you tell me to leave now, I won't be here again. Nay, hello, Vivian. No, I won't. I'm very glad to see you. Come on, I'll introduce you to my children. Is this comfortable? Am I disturbing anyone? No one, it's fine. Seeing the beautiful woman, Nayeli's mother, with her lips pressed together, retreated to her room. And the children surrounded their father. It was obvious that they were happy to see him. Kids, I'd like you to meet my friend Vivian. Pete was the first to be introduced. Beautiful, just like a princess. I'm Pete. No. What can I call you? What do you like? Reese. Pete sounds gentle and affectionate. I think I'm going to call you that too. Okay, said the boy. And little Vivi hid behind her daddy and didn't want to go near a strange aunt, even though she was beautiful. But Vivian gave her a doll when the child gave in. For the rest of the evening, she sat in the arms of the strange aunt. Then everyone drank tea, but Daniel's mother-in-law never came out, though the children called for her. The children had to go to bed, and Vivian went home. "Will you be coming again?" asked Pete. "No. If your daddy says I can, I'd love to." "Daddy will let me," said Daniel. He walked Vivian to the car and they said goodbye. As soon as Daniel entered the house, his mother-in-law immediately flew up to him and began to complain that you've already forgotten your wife, got yourself a woman, and even brought her home. You've forgotten my daughter in 2 years, and you've been going out with women. Samantha, don't say things you don't know. Vivian is an old acquaintance of mine, former student. I've never forgotten Haley, and I never will. Then why did she come to our house? Swear to me you're not having an affair with her, my mother-in-law asked in a raised tone of voice. Well, first of all, I'm not going to swear anything to you. She came to my house. And secondly, my friends can come to me, or I have to ask your permission who can come to me and who cannot. I'm an adult and will decide for myself who I will socialize with and when. I'm very grateful for your help, but if it's in exchange for controlling my personal life, I'd rather put my kids in daycare. Samantha said, I'm sorry. Samantha was afraid that her son-in-law could deprive her of communication with her grandchildren and lowered the degree of claims. You do not take offense at me. It just hurt for my daughter. She just died, and you've already found someone else. I've said my piece, Samantha, and I'm not going back to this conversation. I told you before, and I'll tell you now. If there's a woman my children love, she'll be my wife. Of course, I won't be single all my life, however much you may wish it. At the same time, I never forget Neeli for a moment, and I'm very grateful to her for the years we've been together. The week passed quietly. Vivian neither came nor called. Sunday afternoon, she came over and invited me to take the kids for a walk. There's nothing for them to do outside. It's cold out there. They can catch a cold, said the mother-in-law, as always loudly and with an irritated intonation. No. And we'll go to the shopping center. It's warm there, lots of entertainment. I think the children will like it. Said Vivian in a calm tone. Who do you think you are? She thinks. Samantha mocked her. Your opinion is nobody here, eh? But Daniel came up and the mother-in-law faltered. Daniel told the kids to get dressed. We're going out. Yay, shouted the children. Of course, Grandma loved them, but they had been at home all week, walking around the house. They, understandably, wanted entertainment. While riding in the car, Vivian talked to Pete. He knew a lot of fairy tales and talked about good and evil, but he didn't know letters, he couldn't read, and he was already 6 years old. Vivi was still a little girl, but it was time for her to study a little too. Daniel, kids need to be put in daycare. They don't socialize with their peers, they don't do anything but read stories. That's good, but it's not enough. Children need to develop. Daniel didn't say anything, but realized that Vivian was right. When they arrived, they went to the children's entertainment center. The kids were playing there and Pete came over too. He looked at first, but then he wanted to play too. He started pushing the kids to get into the center. The kids didn't like that and they started pushing him too. Daniel wanted to intervene, but Vivian stopped him. This is what I told you about. He doesn't know how to play in a group because he doesn't socialize with his peers. Don't rush him, let him try to solve the problem. But the kid took offense and ran to complain to his dad. Daniel explained to him as best he could that he was wrong. We didn't get home until the evening. The children were happy, though tired. Saying goodbye, Vivian told him to think about what she said. Daniel found a private kindergarten and put the children there. But it cost him some of his life. At home, there was a huge scandal. The mother-in-law did not try to restrain herself and was not shy in expression. This girl hummed in your ear that the children should be given to a kindergarten. Right? I can see right through that bitch. She wants to get into bed with you, so she's all about the kids and you. But I ain't gonna let that happen. Next time, she'll be out of this house like a cork out of a bottle. It could be your mistress. Why did you name your daughter Vivian so you wouldn't forget about her? Isn't that a steep price to pay, Samantha? You're a smart woman and you want what's best for your grandchildren. Do you think they need to socialize with their peers? Do they need to know something other than the stories you read to them? Should they be ready for school? Why don't you tell me I'm wrong? That's just it. And about the name Vivian, that's what Neeli called her and you know it well. The mother-in-law didn't say anything and left, slamming the door. The children loved the daycare center. Only the teacher complained that Pete hurt the children if they didn't give him a toy. The kids complained to their parents, and they complained to me. I explained to him how to behave, but he was very offended by me and all day long. You see, he sits in the corner. You should talk to him at home. Daniel didn't think Vivian would be so right. For 6 months, he'd been struggling with Pete and how to deal with the kids, and the teacher would tell denially. We won. He started to communicate with the kids, and they accepted him. I'm so happy for the kid. He did it. And Niall was also proud of his son, but he was even more grateful to Vivian. Vanessa and Aaron's wedding day was approaching. Daniel received an invitation. They entered the wedding hall together with Vivian. She was over the moon. The wedding was grand. There were not many people, just close family and friends, but it was a lot of fun. Songs, dances, toasts, and a very beautiful toast was given by Niall. A wedding is a special celebration. Beautiful, unforgettable. Many people say that after the wedding the relationship leaves all the romance and remain only gray everyday life. I would like to tell you that everything depends only on you. Remember this always, because how you will build a family life such it will turn out as a result. Happiness to you, and let the flame that burns between you nowhere never disappear. Bitter, she'd never danced with him before. And now he asked her to dance and said thank you in her ear, that she was in his life again. His arm was around her waist and he held her tightly in his embrace. She was only afraid of one thing, that the music would end quickly and he would rush home to his children. But she reassured herself that he wouldn't be lost for so long now, especially since he didn't want to be. She had much to ask him, to find out how he had lived all this time. But she had matured, become more mature, and waited for her time. She knew it would come soon. The house became more crowded. Aaron came to live with his wife, even though he had a nice apartment. They were together 24 hours a day. At work, Vanessa was his subordinate, and at home, Aaron obeyed Vanessa in everything. But her sister wondered how they didn't bore each other. Perhaps it was love. Vanessa was a wise and patient woman. All the sharp corners she smoothed with one word, and always said that the main in the family, Aaron. This gave the husband confidence in himself, and he thanked Vanessa for it. As soon as Pete's kindergarten was going well, Vivian offered to hire a teacher to prepare him for school. I have an employee in my department, Alechka. Her mother is an elementary school teacher, but retired. Let her come to Pete's house once a week, say on Saturday, and tutor him. Vivi would need to be tutored too, but since she's younger, they have different curriculums, I guess. But I think Vivi would hear and see everything, and it would be good for her too. I understand that it's hard for you to provide for 2 children alone, and these services have never been cheap. But I can help you by giving you a bonus on top of Olga's salary to pay for Pete's tuition. Vivian, thank you, but it's not necessary. I earn good money, and I can pay my son's tuition. Don't humiliate me. I'm a man, and I've always felt responsible for my family and children. No offense, Niall, I mean it in the best of intentions. Then I'll make a deal, and we'll start school on Saturday. Nay, thank you, Vivian. You've been a great help. On Saturday, as agreed, Narmin came to Pete's house. He liked her immediately. As Vivian had expected, her daughter stood like a tin soldier and absorbed what the teacher was saying to Pete. Samantha was the only one who wasn't satisfied. The children were being bored with their lessons, teaching and teaching as if they wouldn't have time to learn everything in school. But when in a month, both children knew all the letters and Pete was already reading by syllables, she cried, kissed him on the top of his head and said, "What a good boy you are. You're just like your mommy. She'd be proud of you." 6 months later, Pete was reading remarkably well, counting to 20 and solving simple examples. The child learned to retell what he had read, which developed his speech and increased his vocabulary. The question of choosing a school came up. There was a school in the cottage community, but Daniel wanted a more prestigious one. Vivian advised him to give to this school, which is not far from his home. Your mother-in-law might get sick. You're on a business trip. The child can get to school on his own. It's quiet here. There's security, no strangers' cars. And when you go to high school, you can transfer to a prestigious school. Carmen will also come at first to help the child to do his homework. And in 4 years, we'll see. Daniel agreed with Vivian's arguments, and Pete went to a school near the house. Everyone came to see him off to first grade. His grandmother, sister, father, and Aunt Vivian. The child was very happy, felt supported, and was not afraid of anything. Little Vivi was raring to go to her brother. She wanted to stand next to him and hold his hand. Finally, Denial let her go, and she went over to Pete and stood beside him. She didn't want to go home, so she went to class with him. Then they were brought home together. The first day, there were no classes, but there was a Knowledge Day holiday. For the first time, Samantha saw him off and met him from school. And after 2 months, he was already walking with other children on his own, so the adults had calculated everything correctly. Carmen came to Pete, did lessons with him, and was very pleased with her student. Daniil saw that it was hard for her to come to her son every day, so he offered her to live in the house, and on Saturday he would take her home. She agreed because she wanted to give up her classes. Age was taking its toll. Samantha sulked at first, did not even speak, but seeing the peaceful and calm character of Norman became softer. They talked a lot about life, took walks, drank tea, and the mother-in-law was glad of such a neighborhood. Volitional Vivian and Denial were very timidly establishing a relationship. She was sure that a relationship with a man would bring her what she needed: love, tenderness, attention. Everything a woman gets when she is loved. She was not in a hurry or active. After all, sometimes a woman herself begins to rush events or worse, to lead the process, which is very frightening and repulses a man. Being a mature lady, she did not rush events, did not push the man, and gave him the opportunity to sort out his feelings. She did not call him first, did not impose meeting. She waited for activity on his part and was afraid to scare away the fragile happiness that smiled on her after 5 years. She realized that after a few meetings, she shouldn't treat it like she was marrying him tomorrow. She was very afraid of hurting his feelings for his ex-wife. That was another reason that kept her in no hurry. She didn't want to take up all of his free time and space with her. She also realized that a mature man doesn't show his feelings right away. And Denial was far from being a boy. Despite her mother-in-law's displeasure, they met, went to the theater and movies, spent time with their children, who missed their father very much, but were not in a hurry to go to bed, although both of them wanted it very much. Pete finished first grade. He studied easily. Norman praised him very much. Daniel thanked her for her work, for her warm attitude to Pete, gave her a salary, a bonus, and let her go on vacation. It was almost a year and a half after their meeting, but nothing had moved forward. Daniel did not make any steps for rapprochement, and Vivian lost hope for personal happiness. She decided to go on vacation to a warm place, to bask in the sun, to think and maybe start a new life. A whole new life without Daniel. She took the tickets and flew away. The sea, the sun, the white sand was beautiful. What a nice vacation. She only now remembered that she hadn't been on vacation in 2 years. Work, her new position, it took up all her time. She slept as peacefully as a baby. It had been 10 days since she'd been in this magical place, but it was as if she hadn't rested yet. One day, she dreamed again of a gypsy woman from that distant time. This time, she was friendlier. "Well, why are you afraid of me? I remember you screaming and crying so I wouldn't scare you. Everything I predicted for you came true. Now I can tell you what's next for you. Would you like that? No, don't. Let it stay the way it is. What's going to happen is going to happen. You once told me I wasn't cut out for married life, but I think you were wrong about that. I want to get married, I want kids, but I can't. Well, there are single people. No. Don't worry, you won't get married for a long time, but everything will end well. And most importantly, you're in for a great surprise. You have no idea, but it's going to make you happy." And she was gone. Vivian opened her eyes hard. Her head hurt a little, so she decided that she would not go to the beach today. She took a shower, ate breakfast, and felt better. "No, I'll go to the beach, at least to lie down in the shade, get some sea air." She dozed off again and woke up to someone looking at her. Opening her eyes, she saw Daniel looking at her and smiling. "Well, you wanted to run away and I found you here too. Why did you disappear so suddenly? I thought I would never see you again." I thought, well, I can't wait for Daniel to be nice to me. I've got to do something about it and start living without him. Get used to everyone going their own way. "No, Vivian, we'll go together, if that's okay with you." "No, I don't mind because I love him." Pete graduated from elementary school with an honorable mention. Norman was a great credit to him for teaching him so much. His daughter finished 3rd grade. Daniel and Vivian decided to organize a party for the children. They invited friends and girlfriends from school, invited clowns, and set up tables right outside. The children had fun, and in the evening there was fireworks, a very beautiful sight. It was already getting dark. Parents came to pick up the children and barely took them all home. The holiday turned out to be a glory. Even Samantha enjoyed it. Vivian wanted to go home, but Daniel suggested she stay and go only in the morning. But Samantha had a point here too. It's late for kids, but it's not too late for adults to go home, especially by car. No way she wanted another woman next to Daniel. Vivian didn't argue, packed up and left. As she passed her mother-in-law, Daniel, thank God she's gone or she'd be here all night. As long as I'm alive, no woman will come here. Daniel realized he had to make things right with Vivian. The kids adored her, and she was great to them too, not a mom to the kids. With these thoughts in mind, he drove to her place. On the way, he bought flowers, stopped at a jewelry store, and bought a ring. The closer he drove to her house, the more his heart pounded. It had been almost 6 years since Nayla had been gone. He'd never had a relationship with anyone but Vivian. He'd liked her then, he liked her now, but did he love her? Yes, he knew he did. Fear of losing her speaks to his true feelings for this woman. He has a desire to protect, pity her, care for, and defend her. It speaks of love and tender feelings for her. He truly admired his Vivian, and apart from her, he needed no one. She was a sensual woman, a real gift for a man. She was always emotional and lived with an open heart. She wanted love, tenderness from him, and she liked to express her feelings in a physical way, a kiss, a hug. It was nice to feel how she reacted to his touch. She was always trembling, and that made him delighted. Yes, she was a gorgeous woman. That's what Daniel thought as he pulled up in front of her house, seeing Daniel with a bouquet of flowers from the window. Vivian paced nervously around the room, anticipating a change in her personal life. And she was not mistaken. Right from the door, handing her a bouquet of flowers, he gave her a ring and asked her to marry. She hung on him with joy and, covering his face with kisses, repeated, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." She did not let him take off his dress. She wouldn't let him take off his cloak. She hugged him and wouldn't let him go. Why do the tears flow so much? Why do my eyes sting so much? The mascara. It smeared on her face and made her look ugly. Grace, don't look at me. I'm ugly now. You never were. But now you're the prettiest and happiest, my girl. And finally, he allowed himself to relax and kiss her. How long she had waited for this. I am the happiest woman in the world. You understand me? The very, very one. Of course I understand, because I'm just as happy. No, come on, let's go tell Daddy. Andrew was working in his office and was happy to see Daniel. Daddy, Daniel proposed to me, and I said yes. I'm about to become the wife of the best man in the world. Will you bless us? No, can I not, when my daughter is the happiest I've ever seen. For a father, that's all that matters. Vanessa and Aaron came and congratulated the newlyweds. Vanessa moved quietly. It was hard for her. She was about to give birth to twins. Men. Aaron was happy to be the father of 2 sons. Danielle, please move him into our home. I found him a good English school. I think we should leave Vivi with Samantha for now because it would be cruel to deprive her of her grandchildren so abruptly. Friday night, we'll all go over to her place. It's a long winter break, so we'll all be together. And as soon as she finishes 4th grade, we'll put her in Pete's school. I think we should do that. I'll think about it, said Daniel. How to do it without offending anyone. I'll go. I still have to talk to my mother-in-law. I don't think she'll be as happy as your dad. They kissed and he left. Samantha, I've decided to get married. I've just proposed to a woman you know very well. It's been 6 years since Nayeli's been with us. The children need a mother, and I need a woman I love. Vivian is the best person for that role. The children adore her, and she's wonderful to them, so I see no reason to delay the marriage. We haven't set a date yet, but I think it'll be soon. I always knew you were a bastard. I don't know if Nayeli told you, but I was against her marrying you. There's no place to test you. You're only interested in women. She was deliberately insulting him, using the most hurtful language to make him mad, and then accuse him of being unbalanced and not trustworthy with children. Daniel sat with his fists clenched so tightly that his hands were white. I'm sure, my mother-in-law continued, that you've had this girl before, and you cheated on my daughter with her. It's just that Nayeli loved you so much she didn't want to see it. And I offered to keep an eye on you, but she wouldn't let me, which is a shame. I would have brought you to light. You're such a cheapskate. Samantha, what you want me to do, tell me if I can do it, but I'm not listening to any more of this crap. You don't have to get married. No other woman can come into this house where the mother of your children lived. Thousands of men live widowed and don't marry. They don't die. And here it's only been 6 years and he's already thinking of getting married. Good people, look at this womanizer. Where's it seen that someone else's impudent grandmother, my grandchildren called Mom? I won't allow it. So as far as I understand, you don't want me to get married. No, I don't. And you have no right to ignore my opinion. All right, dear mother-in-law. I have long endured all your insults and insults for the sake of Nailai's memory and for the sake of the children you love. But I see that your rudeness has gone beyond all limits. Whatever you do, I'm getting married. If you insult me as you did today, you'll pack your suitcase and go back to your village. I won't stand for this rudeness any longer. If you turn your children against me, there'll be no place for you in this house. Think about it. You've got all night. If you don't agree with me, you'll pack your bags and go home in the morning. If you stay, I'll know you've accepted the inevitable. Oh, I forgot to tell you something else. Pete will live at Vivian's house from September 1st and attend English school there. You, if you agree, of course, will stay here with your granddaughter for another year. And after a year, I'll take her away and she'll go to school with Pete too. You could stay in the house. It's more comfortable than yours. But you know the conditions. Now, I've said everything. Think about it. I won't change my mind. What kind of father are you? You're a snake, not a father. Naileka can see everything from above. She and I won't let you live. Okay, Samantha, I'll take you right now while I have time. I'm waiting for you. Don't wait for me. You gave me till morning, so I'll decide what I'm going to do in the morning. Or are you going to kick the old woman out? Or better yet, beat her up? Nay, Samantha, I admire your imagination. Where do you get all this stuff? Have I ever hurt you, humiliated you, or worse, hit you? Where is this coming from? It's like I'm having a bad dream and I can't wake up. Or stop fantasizing and go get some rest. I'll be up in the morning. And he went to say goodnight to the children, who wouldn't fall asleep until he performed this ritual. In the morning, the mother-in-law did not come out for breakfast, and the children ran to her room to see their grandmother. She was lying there with high blood pressure, and Daniel called an ambulance. They gave her a shot and told her to lie down for a day. Daniel called work and took the day off to be with the kids. He didn't want to leave the house, so he wouldn't leave Samantha alone, so he didn't go anywhere with the kids. And they played in the backyard. For a whole week, the mother-in-law didn't talk to them. She didn't know what to do. Her anger at Daniel for her daughter was getting out of hand. She was afraid to snap, not to be rude to him again, and not to have a stroke. She decided to call Nina Ivanovna. Having told her everything in detail, she was sure that she would be on her side. But her friend listened to her for a long time, kept silent, and finally decided to express her opinion. It's sad, dear Samantha. What you're doing is not a good example for your grandchildren. Your jealousy has blinded you. I must commend your son-in-law for his tact and patience with you. Doing someone else's monastery with their own statutes, wise people do not climb. You're only making things worse by your behavior. It's been 6 years since Daniel left his wife, but life goes on. I realize losing a daughter is not just a grief. It's a tragedy, especially since you have, but your son-in-law is a young man. He has children to raise. The girl needs her mom. Soon she'll have questions that only a woman can answer. She won't be able to tell her dad everything, and she loves Vivian. But my daughter, if she was alone, she'd never marry. She'd be faithful to that scoundrel. So why does he have to get married? Samantha, you can't even control yourself when you talk to me right now, and you're calling Daniel names. That is not the behavior of a grown woman. And as for your Nayeli's marriage, I'll tell you this. It's harder for a woman with 2 children to get married. It's not just her desire. There must be a man who loves her and her children, and then a woman has a very short reproductive age, and men want their children. That's why your son-in-law is marrying a woman half his age. If you love your grandchildren and want to continue to communicate with them, if you value the memory of your daughter, do not persecute the man she loves so much. Your son-in-law is a decent man, an excellent and caring father. For 6 years, he's kept your daughter's memory alive. He has a right to be happy. Don't interfere with him. I would advise you to be kinder to him, more compliant, and you will spend your whole life near your beloved grandchildren. Patience and wisdom. That's not what I expected from you. I thought you'd support me. What am I supposed to do? Bless him or something? Well, at least stay out of the way. Okay, Norman, thanks for the lesson. I get it. And she went to her room to prepare for her final battle with her son-in-law. She decided to take the children to her village, and before leaving to call the guardianship authorities, let them come and ask the grief-stricken father, "Where are your children?" Let him answer if he can. Of course, she realized that the children will not be taken away from him, but she will get on his nerves before the wedding. My poor daughter, if you knew what's going on in our kingdom. She cried looking at her daughter's picture. She called the guardianship authorities, told them about the children, where half of the information was taken from TV series, asked when they could come and see all this. The lady with the squeaky voice said she'd get a call back. The next day she got an early call back before Daniel had even left for work. She was afraid he would figure it out, so she went up to her room to "Hello, Samantha," squeaked the same familiar voice. "Inga will be able to come to you tomorrow afternoon. Have a good day." She heard the dial tone and disconnected the phone. Frankly speaking, she regretted her action. She was afraid, but the deed was done and there was no further retreat. The next day, as soon as Daniel left for work, she did not clean up the table, but instead scattered the children's things and left with the children to her village. The inspection came when no one was home, and after waiting for a while, they saw a car drive up to the house and an imposing man get out of it. The women looked at each other and, as if on command, began to tidy themselves. One fixed her hair, another raised her bust higher, and the third looked in the mirror and painted her lips. Manned up, they waited for the man to come closer. "Daniel, good afternoon. We're from child welfare. May I speak to your children and see their living conditions?" He immediately realized that this was his mother-in-law's last effort before he got married. She didn't get it. "Come on, I'll show you around." The youngest, Tina, gave a thumbs up to her friend. "Oh my God, what a man!" As he opened the door and let the women in, he was surprised that no one was home. "Where are your children?" The most experienced woman asked sternly. She was both older than the others and, apparently, in her position. Daniel realized that if he said, "I don't know," they would immediately give a verdict. A bad father who doesn't watch his children. To gather his thoughts, he motioned for everyone to sit down and said, "He's out with Samantha. She's his ex-wife's grandmother's mother. And where they're walking, you can call them. Invite them home. We want to talk to them. While you're calling them, show them your kids' rooms." And they followed Daniel up to the second floor of the house. The kids' rooms are always such a mess and 3 layers of dust, and she ran her finger along the shelves where the children's books and toys were. No, of course, apparently, the grandmother was in a hurry to go out with the grandchildren and did not put the rooms in order. "I see," said Irina Sergeyevna in a snide and gravely voice. "So we will wait for your children today." "No, my mother-in-law's phone is not available." "No, it's a pity. I'll have to deprive such a father of his parental rights." "What's that for?" "The dust on the shelves. You never see that in your house, do you?" "Don't be rude, my dear. It could cost you." "Are you threatening me?" "No, of course not, but I'm telling you how it could end. Night, tomorrow, early in the morning, we'll come again." And they walked out of the gate in a single file. Daniel called Rayeka and asked her to come over today and clean the house. He told her to bring a helper with her so that everything would be clean today. He waited for them and went to the village to pick up the children. He was sure that his mother-in-law had taken the children there. An hour later he was there. The children were already going to sleep. "Quickly gather your things and get in the car," the father commanded. The children were happy to see him and quickly ran to the car. Sophia stood on the hood and looked at her son-in-law with bulging eyes. I don't want to see in my house anymore. You have no place there. Nayli must be turning over in her grave from your antics, but it won't make any difference. The wedding is in August." As they drove away, he saw Samantha running out the back window, waving her fists at him. She arrived at his house again in the middle of the night. When he opened the door for her, she walked with her head down and went up to her room. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, the women's team arrived at Daniel's house in the same formation. The children were already eating breakfast when the guests entered the house. After talking to the kids, they went up to their rooms again. After looking at the perfect order, they went downstairs. "Well, Daniel, we liked everything. You seem to be a good father, or rather, trying to be one. That's commendable. We'll check in with you from time to time to see how the kids are growing up. Goodbye. Good luck to you." Tina looked at Daniel with eyes that said more than words could say. But Daniel paid her no attention. And they left. Daniel decided not to start the conversation with his mother-in-law first. Samantha, after a phone call with a friend and a check from the child welfare authorities, started it herself. "Daniel, I've been thinking a lot about the rest of our lives, and you're free to do what you want. I've realized what I've been saying is resentment for my daughter, jealousy. I'll even admit to you that I called the child welfare authorities to take the kids away from you. Then I thought about my daughter. She wouldn't forgive me. She loved you too much, but it was too late to cancel their visit. I thought long and hard about whether to tell you, but I figured if I didn't, it would be a sin on my soul. I was going to give you a heart attack, but I was going to call an ambulance later. My hands were shaking when I poured that medicine in your tea, but I couldn't. The kids ran up to you and hugged you. I thought, if God took their mother from them, what am I going to do with them as orphans? I can't lift them up and make them happy. I poured out the tea. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry I overreacted. I'll tell you right off, I hate your Vivian and I never will. She took my daughter's place undeservedly, but I'll put up with her for the grandchildren. I'd rather you were a widower, but I realize you're a young man and you need a family. Tonight we're closing this subject and burying the hatchet. For the sake of my grandchildren, I'm ready to step on my own toes. Thank you, Samantha, for your candor. I want to tell you that we're getting married at the end of August because then we're going to my parents' house with the kids. They haven't seen them in a long time and they miss them. John said the mother-in-law cried, and with the words, "Do as you please," went to her room. The wedding day came, the most unforgettable day in the life of newlyweds. It's a once-in-a-lifetime celebration, and the happiness it brings lasts a lifetime. For Vivian, the white dress, the flowers, the ransom. All these wedding trappings were of no importance. What mattered to her was to hear Daniel say yes when he answered the question, "Do you, Daniel, want to take Vivian as your wife?" After all, it would be said in front of all the guests and witnesses. And it is nothing less than a declaration of love, and it is a most favorite tune to her ears. For them, this was a momentous day. This is their first and main love ball, which will be remembered forever and will open a new life for them, a married life. Daniel kept his eyes on her. "You embarrass me. You don't know how proud I am when other men turn around and look at you. My vocabulary is so poor. I can't tell you how amazed I am by your beauty." Standing at the check-in, Vivian heard, "No, God, so beautiful, so old." She didn't recognize who it was, and she didn't turn around. But she heard the answer and recognized the voice of her beloved little sister. He is the love of her life, and she doesn't want anything else. Good for Vanessa. She said it right, and she snuggled closer to Daniel. The mother-in-law didn't come to the wedding. No one really wanted her there. She'd only spoil everyone's mood, though everyone sympathized with her grief. The kids were a few days late for school and stayed with their grandparents. After the wedding, Samantha had calmed down a bit and treated Vivian like family.